Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
Love sports.
Sports. When
it comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
I need to talk a little sports with you, Ags. David Nunia here with TexAgs Radio. Billy Liucci here on TexAgs Radio. Olin Buchanan.
We will develop men, we will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
The best way for us to win is to do it together.
Do you realize everybody knows who you are right now?
I think we're coming into this year with a new confidence.
Schools are like, we're freaking Texas A&M, man. Like,
that's about as pretty a throw-catch combo as there is.
I saw the safety roll, the slot fade. I knew where I needed to put the ball.
You had no other option but one hand at that point.
Yeah, man, 50-50 ball, I got to come down with it.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
Good morning. There we go. Little delay. That's all right. It's Friday, baby. March 15th. Good morning, Aggieland. Welcome to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. I'm Ryan Brauninger. In the host chair today, as David finishes up his vacation, he'll be back with you on Monday. I'm sitting in the lovely Rollo Insurance Studios, and we are about to kick off our Friday morning, as we do every morning, with an appearance from Olin Buchanan, the Go Hour, presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. Maroon never looked so good as it does with Maroon U. And anytime that we talk to OB in the morning, it's presented by TexAgs Coffee. It's coffee talk. Beat the hell out of the morning by going to texags.com/coffee. Texas A&M 80, Ole Miss 71 from Bridgestone Arena. In Nashville, Tennessee last night, a frenetic win for the Aggies that they had to have. They absolutely had to have. And I'm going to ask, this is on-air production meeting, if we have Olin, because the screen where Olin usually is in front of me has now gone completely black and has a lower third. But Olin, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Ryan.
Okay, can you see me?
I can see you, Ryan.
Okay, we just can't see you, and that's good for our listening, our viewing audience.
I guess so, yeah. Okay.
Well, hey, man, I guess first of all, when you take us through the atmosphere of the SEC basketball tournament inside the arena, because I've been to the baseball tournament in Hoover, and it is, like, to me, one of the best people watching venues of all time. But I think people kind of sleep on the atmosphere of having those games being played all day. How many of those fans stick around? And then, so just what did you see inside the arena in the build-up, and what kind of environment was it there for the game last night?
Well, I thought it was what you'd expect. I mean, it wasn't overly raucous or anything like that, but a big part of that is, the Kentucky guys aren't here yet. The Alabama guys aren't here yet. I mean, they had some of their fans, but their legions haven't been here yet. And Tennessee plays today. So, the top ranked teams in the traditional powerhouses, they typically take up most of the tickets. It's a closer commute for them, and they're used to being here. So, it was a good crowd. It was a good atmosphere. But I could hear this one A&M fan the whole time yelling, 3 seconds, call 3 seconds, call it both ways.
Was it Billy Liucci?
No, it wasn't Billy, because he hadn't gotten there yet. But
it must have been early in the first half.
Right. So when it's only one guy yelling and you can hear him, and turn around and pick him out, that's not the usually the case in a really raucous, crazy crowd. But they were into it. But I think the level of intensity that's usually reserved for the players. But the crazy atmosphere starts today with Tennessee and Alabama and Auburn and Kentucky getting into action.
Well, yeah, and I thought, to your point, the players played at a pace, and it was like frenetic and chaotic the entire time, and there was certainly an intensity on the floor. Whether that was matched by the fans in the arena or not is a different story. But here's my thing, Olin. You had to win, so the manner in which the Aggies won last night matters not. It didn't matter. It's not a beauty contest at this point, right? They win 80-71 in a game where there were 49 fouls called. Just your overall thoughts on the themes of the game from your perspective.
Well, first of all, I thought it was a good win for the Aggies. Look, yeah, did they blow out Ole Miss a week ago? They sure did. And because you were a college athlete, Ryan, if you get embarrassed on one day, you want to make up for it the next. I think for most competitors, it drives you to be better. And I thought Ole Miss would be a lot better, and they were. And A&M matched Ole Miss whenever Ole Miss made a move. A&M answered and was always able to keep them at arm's length. And then, they had that 13-point lead, and just like that, it went down to 10. I mean, it went down to 3, and A&M goes to the free throw line with 1:48 to play, and Boots Radford hits 2 free throws, and that starts in just a free throw extravaganza for the Aggies. Think about this, with the game on the line, with all the pressure at stake, and really your season's on the line, or at least your NCAA hopes to keep them alive, and you make 17 of 20 free throws in 2 minutes. Now, could they have played better defensively so you didn't have to make 20 free throws? Yeah, but I think that showed a lot of fortitude when it really mattered most, to be able to step up and make those big free throws when you had to.
Yeah, absolutely. But there was always, like you said, A&M kind of kept Ole Miss at arm's length. There was never the put-away basket. Like, you could never get it from 9, 12 points to 18, 20, 25 points, and then the game's over. You just couldn't put them to bed. And I think, Olin, when I watched that game, and I even rewatched some of the highlights last night, to me, first thing, Anderson Garcia is the best bet on this team. Like, you can count on him every night to give you the same thing. And what he does, this team is nowhere near the bubble without Anderson Garcia. He is a menace on the backboards. But because of that, a lot of A&M's best looks and best scoring opportunities, and then successful scoring opportunities, came on second phase opportunities. So their primary sets, I didn't think they were getting great looks, but they were dominating the offensive glass, and then the kickouts for the threes after the offensive rebounds, them able to cut off of passes out from an offensive rebound. I thought that's where they were the best last night offensively. And then, like I said, a lot of that had to do with Anderson Garcia.
Anderson Garcia, he is so consistently good on the boards. 8 offensive rebounds. He had 14, 8 offensive, and he gives his guys a chance to make, if they miss a shot, he's going to give them a chance to try again. Now, hey, Anderson, you might want to be careful about drawing that flagrant one.
Can we talk about that? Hold on. I had a big problem with that. How is that a flagrant? I mean, they were both tangled up. Just give them both a foul and move on. That's actually one of the things that I had in my notes, because A&M was up by 6 at that point. And then Ole Miss gets two free throws and the possession after that. And I thought that was a pretty big moment in the first half. I didn't agree with that call. I thought they were both wrapped up with each other. How do they go to the review and then give Anderson a flagrant one after that?
It was explained to me that Anderson, look, I'm with you, but it was explained to me, right, that Anderson, they felt like Anderson had the hook, had hooked the guy and was the instigator in pulling him down.
I mean, doesn't that happen on every time a ball's shot?
And if you hook a guy and pull him down that way, it's going to be that's a flagrant one. So I'm with you, but I have to admit that when it comes to the the rule and the letter of the law on the rules. First of all, I'm probably ignorant on exactly how it should be called, and secondly, I'm biased. But I'm telling you how it was explained to me.
Well, to me, that's something that happened because they both went to the ground. It gets called because you watch any time a ball goes up and what happens underneath the glass, and there's guys hooking each other left and right.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily bring them to the ground.
That's my issue. So them going to the ground is the issue?
Yes.
Okay. Well, to me, it's like if hooking is the issue, then.
But in my biased point of view, I think it was it Jermaine Brakefield?
Yes.
Number 4 that he ended up with. He was to me, he had the leverage to pull him up. But again, I'm biased. So.
I am too. But when you look at it on replay, you're going, okay, if you're going to call a foul, fine, but they both need to be fouled here. And one shouldn't be singled out as a flagrant one.
Right. Yeah, I agree. But apparently,
I thought the officiating was very ticky-tack over the course of the night. It was a big reason why. Now, look, neither team shot the lights out, but the officiating also didn't really allow the game to get into a good flow.
I thought they were letting them play a little bit in the first part of the first half, and then maybe the game was getting too physical. I don't know, but I'll say this about the officials: they were calling the fouls, down the stretch.
Sure,
They had to because Ole Miss was wanting to foul.
I texted Billy. I saw him on one of the shots of the A&M bench. He was sitting there a couple of rows, maybe a row behind the Aggie bench, and I texted him. And I said, "Get ready. This last 6 to 7 minutes is going to take a long time," and it did. It was. I mean, the game didn't end until 8:30. I don't think that final contest started until almost close to 9 o'clock. I was getting into bed when they were still in the first half. I know that between Florida and Georgia there.
About it. It was not for me, but yeah, I thought they were gonna. I thought A&M had taken control when they got up 13. I think it was a Boots Radford 3-pointer with about 5 minutes to go, and they're up 13. And then Solomon Washington, a couple minutes later, gets his 5th foul, and he adds so much beyond scoring. And so then he wasn't there, and I think A&M started to press some turnovers. Next thing you know, it's a game. But again, they got to the foul line, and they showed some intestinal fortitude and gutting up and making those free throws.
I thought guys like Jace Carter had good minutes. I thought Wildens Levesque in his limited time was okay. Like he moved the line forward, and he made a big free throw down the stretch, and he was in the game down the stretch because, like you mentioned, with Solo fouling out. And it was so funny to me. Solo's games are like must watch because he gets 3 really good looks from deep and clanks all 3 of them. Then he gets the ball late in the shot clock and he's one up and touches no rim. Ball nothing but net. He's a fun watch.
He missed his first 4 3-point attempts, and you're saying, I don't think Solo should be taking any more 3-point attempts. And just like immediately after saying that, boom, he hits one, and it was a big one. I thought it was a good game for A&M. You can say, hey, was it artistic or anything like that? No, but I thought that was a good, scrappy game. I thought it was the way A&M wins.
Sure, and I think that's. We talked about it yesterday with Logan after you went off the air, OB. It's almost like they have to have some sort of organized chaos for them. Like those type of games, they're really good in because they've got 5 really good athletes on the floor. They can pressure you in so many different ways. But it was, and I was one of my notes here says Wade up and down game. Like Wade is the perfect. Watching Wade in those type of situations, it's like the perfect depiction of what this team is at its best. Like it's up and down, and they frustrate you, and then they go on these runs where it's like, man, that was a really fun stretch of basketball, and Wade was in the middle of some of that again last night.
Wade Taylor's like playing roulette, high risk, high reward, and it might confound you and leave you broken for a while, but when he gets on a run and you get hot and he starts doing what Wade does, you can stack some chips in a hurry, and that's what he did. He finished with 20 points.
Yeah,
had a lot of assists. At one point, A&M went on a 9-0 run, and he had 7 of the points and assisted on the others, which I think was a little bit based on layup. So, that's what Wade is. It's a roller coaster with Wade, and you know what, roller coasters are fun.
Well, you said roulette and counting chips. Well, I think he's able to play that way because you've got a guy that can count cards in the way he rebounds in Anderson Garcia. And how many times last night, I know just off the top of my head, on 2 occasions where Wade kind of he forces up one of these wild shots and the possession is extended. One of the times, Anderson read an air ball. He read it earlier than everybody else and positioned himself to grab it and reset the possession. And then another time I think it was a baseline fadeaway, where that's a tough rebound to read, and Anderson positions himself early. What he does, it is a masterclass. It's not luck. This guy studies this stuff. There's no way he can be right as many times as he is without having a great elite feel for what the game is doing, but also he's got to do some homework. So if Wade is your roulette player or your blackjack player, then standing behind him is his card counter in Anderson Garcia.
Here's something else about Anderson. He has great hands. Like a lot of the A&M guys, I have to tell you, they don't have the best hands, especially the big men. And that's part of the reason they don't score a lot. But Anderson has great hands. I bet had he grown up in the United States, he'd been a hell of a receiver.
Well, I wonder how much baseball he played growing up, and was he an infielder? That's how my brain works there in the Dominican Republic. But look, we're going to keep talking. Last night, we'll look ahead to Kentucky, and then we got to talk about the bubble. As of this morning, Joe Lunardi, the premier bracketologist in the land, has the Aggies as the last team in. Very precarious spot to be in. We'll talk about that and much more on the other side of the break. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, we are rolling right along on a Friday morning. Ryan Brauninger in the host chair. This is TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. The Go Hour presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations and Coffee Talk. Presented by TexAgs, BTHO of the morning by going to texags.com/coffee. I have not yet, bad host, I have not yet given the show rundown nor introduced our crew today. It's the B team in the back. We got Cade. Who else is helping us back there running it? It's a skeleton crew this morning, OB, run by the B team captain myself.
It is the B team today. We got off to a rough start.
It's okay.
Nick would tell me lock in. He actually texted me last night. He's like, hey, lock in. All right. We're not very locked in there, but now we are. We're ready to go. We're rolling. You're doing a good job in there, Bronny.
Yeah, we thank you for being here during spring break. And your sidekick there, I should make him go shirtless instead of having that no good soccer club shirt he's got on. Unbelievable. No feel.
Unbelievable. He's got a Denver Nuggets shirt underneath there too. I don't know what he's doing over there. That's tough stuff.
In the social center, presented by the Angry Elephant, is Miss Callie Garner. Callie, good morning.
Good morning. How's it going?
I'm doing great. Did you know that Aggies gather at the Angry Elephant? And like your politics, you love your bar. You can find an Angry Elephant in Bryan, College Station, Magnolia, Frisco, and San Antonio.
I've heard that.
You've heard that?
I've heard that once or twice.
Listen, I hope you're doing some research right now because we're going to come to you at some point in the show to talk about the bubble and set the bubble. As we were about to talk a little bit about that with Olin Buchanan. We got Mark French a little bit later. We had the baseball bunch. This show is going to be split pretty evenly between basketball and baseball. Aggies on the road against Florida. We'll have the baseball bunch. In the 9 o'clock hour, Billy Liucci will join us, and then we'll close the show at 10:30 with a guest appearance from my good friend Nick De La Torre, who covers the Florida baseball team better than just about anybody. But back out to the hotline, we talked to Olin Buchanan, like I said, the Go Hour. And, OB, we start examining the landscape of college basketball and Joe Lunardi having Texas A&M as his final team in the tournament. As I said before we ended last break, a very precarious spot to be in because you're doing a lot of wishing and hoping. So if you believe, let's say that Joe Lunardi is going to bat 1,000. He's going to get it right. Does the outcome of this game today against Kentucky make or break the Aggies' tournament chances? In other words, can they fall out of the field of 64 with a loss?
Well, I think it's a field of 68 for them. You got to consider that Dayton is a real possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it'll depend on if they lose, how they lose.
You think style points are that important right now?
I don't know. I've quit trying to figure out the selection committees because I thought 2 years ago in Tampa that there was no way A&M wasn't going. And then last year I thought they'd be at the worst a 5 seed, and they got a 7 seed. This was after reaching the SEC tournament finals both years. So I would, if Joe Lunardi is batting 1,000, I would think a loss to Kentucky, which is probably a 3 or 4 seed, does not knock you out. I would think that as long as it's reasonably competitive. But I think Lunardi was one of those guys that had A&M as a 4 or 5 seed last year. So it's nobody bats 1,000, but hopefully he's right on this one.
Yeah, and the bubble did get a little bit smaller. The Atlantic 10 had a bid stolen last night as Dayton lost to Duquesne, I believe. But Dayton is still scheduled to get in, so that's going to make the A10 a 2-bid league. There's a bid stolen. So if you're watching this, and this is the kind of the homework that I'm putting Callie on to update us later in the show, you got to start watching A&M's games. Obviously, you hope they beat Kentucky. That would eliminate a lot of this discussion and certainly aid their resume to get in. But you're in this spot, this precarious spot where you're having to watch other games and wish and hope because you lost 2 to Arkansas, you lost to Vanderbilt, you lost to LSU at home. So to me, Olin, if A&M doesn't get in for whatever reason, let's say they lose to Kentucky and they're playing the waiting game on Selection Sunday and they don't see their name pop up, I don't think you can go to something where, the committee screwed A&M again. You got to go, they're unlucky not to get in, but they didn't handle their business.
Right. Yeah, I think this is a year that if you don't get in, you really can't complain. You just have to look at yourself and say, you shouldn't have lost to Vanderbilt. You shouldn't have lost to Arkansas. You shouldn't have let LSU dominate the second half at Reed Arena. You shouldn't have. Remember, they had the first time they played Ole Miss, they had a 7-point lead with 3 minutes to go at home and lost.
Yeah, South Carolina's another one that got away from you.
South Carolina, you lost on the last shot of the game. You've lost 3 games on the last shot of the game. So, and some of those were against, quite frankly, bad teams. So, look, they've been trying to fight their way back in it, but let's face it, they put themselves in this position. When they beat Tennessee, I can't remember the actual date, but it was about 3 weeks ago. When they beat Tennessee, I remember thinking they were in the NCAA tournament, provided they don't have a collapse.
Yeah.
And then they lost 5 in a row.
And then they got a little bit of a break. They've played well down the stretch. To their credit, when we talked about this a lot yesterday, you have to give Buzz Williams and his staff a big blue star for what they've done in changing the look of the offense, the insertion of Manny Obaski, who we haven't talked about this morning. I thought he played another really solid effort from him. Thought he played well. You have to give them their flowers for making the necessary adjustments, and not just adjustments that had to work. Like They couldn't change things up and it not work or their season's over. So you give them their credit for doing that. They also got aided by that little bit of a lull from Mississippi State. But, that game against LSU, I thought LSU was pretty poor yesterday, especially down the stretch against Mississippi State. But the Bulldogs got a much-needed win. So A&M didn't even get much interconference help from LSU, or because Mississippi State's also right there on that bubble. But another thing that happened yesterday, Olin, that kind of flew under the radar, and actually I'm going to give Callie some credit for noticing this. Memphis now a quad 3 loss for A&M.
Right. And doesn't Memphis have 20-something wins? So it seems odd that a 20-win team is a quad 3 loss, but it is what it is. Now, if Florida could upset Alabama today, Florida might propel Florida back up high enough where the win of Florida becomes a quad 1 win again. But that's a big ask. Look, A&M would get another quad 1 win if they beat Kentucky today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're able to beat Kentucky, I would think A&M is in, provided there's no more upsets that steal spots.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that then. How do you beat a fresh Kentucky team?
I think with A&M, what you do what A&M does.
Make it ugly.
You make it ugly. That's what you do. You make it ugly. You get offensive rebounds. You try to take more shots than they take. So your shooting percentage low doesn't matter as much. You get fouled. You go to the free throw line, and I do think A&M has to play better defense at the arc, because Kentucky likes to shoot threes.
Well, Kentucky is not interested in playing a lot of defense. So
they don't play defense.
You are going to have to hit shots. I don't know. What would you consider a good night of shooting for the Aggies? They're going to need in that percentage, I think, without question, to win the game.
Oh, I think they need to shoot have to shoot between 40 and 45%, right? That if you're less than 40% against Kentucky and the way they shoot, I'm going to be skeptical. Unless you got so many offensive rebounds, it's ridiculous.
Or you're getting to the foul line at a crazy rate.
Foul line a lot. They've beaten Kentucky. We've seen them beat Kentucky, and had if not for a phantom call, that game wouldn't have even gone into overtime. So you have beaten Kentucky. You have a history of playing Kentucky well. I don't think you go in there thinking you can't win that game, but you understand, of course, that it's going to be difficult. It's practically a home game for Kentucky. The state line's less than an hour from here. It's Lexington South, they call it a lot, So it's going to be a tough environment. It's going to be a fun environment, and it's a talented team that can really shoot. But you beat them. If A&M just has to do the things that they do. And if they do the things they do well, then they can win the basketball.
Let me ask you this. A&M has to score in the what range you think to win the game tonight? Like
80.
if I tell you A&M scores 75 points, you think they win?
They could, but I'd be 75. You definitely have a chance to win that game. But the way Kentucky scores, unless you're playing, better defense, and the way Kentucky scores, you probably have to at least be in the 80s. Remember that game in College Station wasn't something like 96, 92. I'm probably a little off one or two on that.
I think it was
But,
97,
of course, it
92.
was overtime.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
97-92 in overtime.
I missed it by one. Okay. So it was real high scoring, but it was overtime. So I would think you need to score in the 80s, and A&M definitely has the ability to do that, especially against a Kentucky team that you pointed out doesn't play a lot of defense.
All right, OB, when we come back, we've got a lot of stuff to get to. We got to bank on it. We got 3 things we want to see before we get you out of here. We'll bank on it at 8:50. So next segment, we'll do 3 things you want to see throughout the course of the weekend. I would imagine yours is going to be a little bit basketball heavy. Mine may be a little bit baseball heavy, but that's good. That's kind of the dynamic of the show today. So a lot more to get to with Olin Buchanan as we roll along in the Go Hour on TexAgs Radio. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. $8:35 on a Friday morning. Hope you're staying dry if you're in Bryan College Station. Got some storms rolling through. Going to be kind of a sloppy weekend here in around town. Good thing Aggie baseball is on the road. to get all their games in. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers inside the Rollo Insurance Studios, and we are right in the middle of the Go Hour presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations, and we are running our mouths with 3 things we want to see, brought to you by Brazos Running Company, your local Aggie-owned specialty running store where you can find Brooks, On, and Hoka shoes, located in Century Square below Star Cinema Grill in College Station. OB, you get us started. One thing you want to see, we'll go alternate, go to 3.
Okay, I want to see Manny Obaseki continue to score in double figures. He's had double figures the last 5 games. A&M is 4-1 in those games. And again, the one they lost was to a really good South Carolina team by 2 points on a late shot. So I don't think it's a coincidence that A&M surge has, what's the word I'm looking for, has been parallel with Manny Obaseki's offensive production.
I want to see a double-double from Boots Radford. I think as one thing that I liked where he's been, I think he could be a little bit more efficient on the offensive end. And I also think we know he has the ability to affect the game on the glass. And maybe if A&M is going to get a lot of second chance opportunities tonight against Kentucky, I'd love to see Boots have a 16-10 type of performance.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too. Because when Wade Taylor and Boots are both average, together getting around 38 to 40 points, A&M typically wins, as a lot of teams would if they had 2 players doing that. But that's been the case for them. But you know what I want to see? I want to see the what I'd call the hot streak Wade Taylor that we haven't seen in a while, where he's just making everything. One of those games where he can score 30. Not necessarily want him to score 30, but because they're like 1-5 when he scores 30 or more. But one of those games where he is in that neighborhood where the defense just has to start coming out to check him, which of course opens other things up. But yeah, I want to see hot Wade Taylor again.
I want to see the Aggie pitching staff really make their mark on the road at a red hot, very talented Florida against a red hot, very talented Florida lineup. A lot of folks around the country are saying that this is fool's gold with this pitching staff. I believe the opposite. I think they are very good. I think they have had a complete mentality change. And I'm ready to put my neck out there and say they are an elite pitching staff. Now, what does that look like in the SEC? Jim Schlossnagle has talked a lot about that over the last couple of days, where, last year the national champion LSU Tigers had a team ERA of like around 5 with Paul Skeens on that pitching staff. So what does success look like in this league? And as daunting as the offenses are in this league, you got to kind of have that parameter in your brain. But I want to see this A&M pitching staff go prove a lot of people, a lot of skeptics wrong in Gainesville against a really talented Florida team.
The third thing I want to see Florida win, but not in baseball. I want to see them win in basketball today. I don't even know if they're playing Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I don't like Alabama. But secondly, a Florida win, like we talked about earlier, may project Florida into like the top 30, which I believe would make them that win over Florida A&M has another quad 1 win. And being on the bubble, A&M needs all the positive data points that they can get. So with to go along with A&M, with Wade playing well and Manny playing well and A&M playing well, I'd like to see Florida get that win so they can get that data point too.
If I'm being a completely neutral analyst here, I want to see the matchups between Jack Caglione and Jay Slavalette and Braden Montgomery and Gavin Grahovic and Kobe Shelton at Florida. I want to see big leaguers playing a college game against each other with a ton of passion to kick off SEC conference play. As the baseball purist in me, the baseball homer, to see Jack Caglione take the mound on Sunday and have to do it against, the first 3 hitters he's going to face in the Aggie lineup are of his caliber, talent-wise, in the game of baseball. I think that's so cool. So I'm ready, and I want to see that.
So this is their ace?
No, well, he has pitched the best, but he pitches on Sunday because he's a two-way player.
Okay.
He plays first base.
I just want to see the Aggie. I know I'm not going to, but I just want to see the Aggies boat race Florida for 3 straight games, and but we all want to see things, right?
Yeah, is it crap in one hand and wish in the other, and see which one fills up faster?
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'm going to do either.
Okay, so what is your plan of action now for the rest of the day? Because for me, when I'm at SEC tournament in baseball, you wouldn't have got me at a hotel room this early in the morning. I'd already been on my way to the ballpark. I'm ready to watch every game throughout the duration of the day. What's your plan here?
Well, I'm about to sit down when we get done and write a quick advance on the Kentucky game.
Your favorite thing to do. For all you listeners, Olin loves writing advances for all the games he covers.
Yeah. And then probably grab a quick bite to eat. I'm going to be talking A&M basketball with Louis Bellina, I think, at 11:30. And then I may try to get a quick nap because it was a long night last night. Didn't get up early and maybe a late night again tonight. So I'm going to try to get, but you know what? I don't sleep in the day usually. So it's hard for me to get that nap. So what'll probably happen is I'll toss and turn and give up on it and head out to Bridgestone and get there probably for the second half of the opening game. By the way, Tennessee's a fun team to watch. So
that's what I was asking. When you start taking inventory of the SEC teams that we know that are going to make the tournament, who do you think has the deepest run in them?
Well, I think Tennessee's an easy answer, but
see, to me, they're kind of up and down. Like they will play defense, and I like that with a tournament team. I like Ziegler at the guard position. Obviously, Dalton Connect can win any game, but I don't know. Like I get kind of some Purdue, Kansas vibes off of Tennessee, where I think that they could lose out in the first weekend, or they can make a run to the Elite Eight Final Four.
Well, Rick Barnes' teams have a history of being upset early, more than you. I think Alabama's a team that could play into the second weekend. Who I really like physically looking at that is South Carolina. Mm-hmm. Man, that's a good-looking physical team. Of course, they were playing Arkansas yesterday and took care of them, but it was Arkansas. So, I don't want to overreact too much to that. But I think both Alabama and Tennessee can make a good run.
And Kentucky, it's the typical John Calipari story. He gets uber talented kids. They look like complete and total mess for about a month and a half, 2 months into the season. And then all of a sudden they start gelling and playing together there in February and in March. And they're talented enough. When you look at their talent watermark, they're above it. And when you look at teams that could win a national championship, and it's going to take some things to go their way. And you wonder about their inability to play defense over the course of a tournament. Like at some point it's going to come up and bite them. But man, they are good enough. They are talented enough to win the whole thing.
I don't know if they were talented enough to win the whole thing. I really don't. But
really? Yeah, I could see that. Like they would struggle in like a street fight with U of H. I think U of H is the best team going in.
I hope so. If it can't be A&M, I'd want to, I don't have any animosity toward UH. I rooted for them on that 5 Slamma Jamma year. But
how short were the shorts you were wearing back then?
They were pretty damn short. They were with long high tube socks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Kentucky, won a couple of games, but they're also going to have a tougher row because they're not going to be seated as high. So they're going to get, in theory, they're going to get tougher competition.
We were going through, Logan and I yesterday, just our national championship, not national championship picks, but like I asked Logan, who was the best team going into the tournament? And I was combing through it, and like, UConn's a good answer, obviously, and we both landed on U of H. I talked about Purdue as a team that has consistently disappointed me, but Zach Edey is a difference maker. He can win you games in the tournament, but I would not put my neck on the line again for Purdue. So through my process of elimination, and I've watched a good bit of U of H this year. I watched them in their Big 12 tournament game yesterday where they just eviscerated TCU. They can win in so many different ways. Kelvin Sampson, this is his best shot, and he's had some good teams, but I think this is his best shot to make a run all the way to the finals.
Yeah, I think so too. I saw that team up close, right? And I was impressed with them. And again, but you know what? That goes back to one of the things, the first thing I want to see. I saw how good Houston is, and I saw how dangerous A&M can be when you have a hot Wade Taylor on a streak.
Well, when we come back, we're going to bank on it, and my bank on it may or may not have to do with Wade Taylor. I was trying to avoid it as long as I could, but we'll bank on it when we come back. We'll let OB go and finish his day in Nashville as he gets ready to cover A&M and Kentucky a little bit later on tonight. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, wrapping up the 8 o'clock hour on a Friday morning. This is TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Joined as always by Olin Buchanan. It's the Go Hour presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations, and we have got a bank on it presented by Vera Bank. Authentic relationship banking built for life. Go see Joel Jackson and the team or learn more at verabank.com. OB, what we banking on?
Hey, I'm banking on, you said it earlier today. I mean, if you want something that's a sure thing, bank on Anderson Garcia. I'm banking on a double-double, a second straight double-double from Anderson Garcia. Double figures points, double figures rebounds, and he will play a key role if A&M is able to go in and beat Kentucky.
Well, if you're bank on it and what I want to see match up, if they get double-doubles from Anderson Garcia and Boots Radford, I think the Aggies would be in good shape to win a game against Kentucky, which I'm going to bank on. You kind of hinted at it. I'm banking on a 30 spot from Wade Taylor tonight. Kentucky's not interested in playing defense. If he gets going early and he starts getting in rhythm early, and they are going to allow him to get shots up, whether it be through the break or within the framework of the offense, if Kentucky is not going to switch screens, if they're chasing him the entire day, I think this could be a U of H type of performance for Wade Taylor where he just completely takes over. And you're looking up with 5 minutes to play, A&M's in the game, and Wade's got 32 at that point. But I'll bank on a 30-point night from Wade Taylor.
Man, I hope that is I hope you're not overdrawn. I'll put it that way when you're banking on that one. I hope you're right, and I hope I'm right. And we're all hoping the Aggies are able to pull it off, because if they do, nothing's assured, but I gotta feel like they're in the NCAA tournament if they can beat Kentucky tonight.
If they beat Kentucky, that gives them, what would it be, 14 quad 1 and 2 wins? Is that correct?
That's right. I know it'd be their I think so. I know they've got 5 quad 1 wins right now.
And last night against Ole Miss would have been their 7th quad 2. I guess I should have updated this before I started the radio show.
Yeah,
so that'd be
we're 12-8.
So they're looking
12-8 currently. So it'd be their 13th win against a quad 1 or 2 team. I don't know how many bubble teams. This is what Callie's researching. That's why she's done a good job already, just kind of chiming in and getting us the facts. But I don't know how many other bubble teams are going to have that high of a number against quad 1 and 2.
Well, there's not a whole lot of teams that have as many, or I'll say this, not a lot of teams. I mean, like 10, 15, but not 20 or 30 teams that have as many quad 1s wins as A&M. And some of the teams that the prognosticators are saying are definitely in don't have close to as Indiana State.
Like New Mexico's ahead of A&M on the bubble. They've got a net of 25, or they're right around A&M on the bubble, excuse me. They've got a net of 25. They've got 6 total quad 1 and 2 wins with a quad 4 loss. How does that make sense?
It doesn't. And that's why, you can't put too much into the net, but it's just a guideline. But I hate that they're going to be at the mercy of a committee. But if you go and beat Kentucky tonight, it's going to make it awful hard for the committee to ignore it.
I would agree. One more thing I'm going to bank on. I'm going to bank on a multi-homer weekend from Jace Lavalette and Braden Montgomery.
All right.
This is a Florida pitching staff that is talented with its starters. They have really struggled with their bullpen, and that's why their numbers are so inflated. It's a very hitter-friendly ballpark down there in Gainesville. Let me rephrase that. I think we see a home run over the course of the week, at least one, from Gavin Grahovic, Jace Lavalette, and Braden Montgomery. I think that's more feasible than 2 guys hitting multiple home runs, but I think this could be a really offensive weekend against Florida for the Aggies. I also believe that one of the games this weekend is going to end up being a shootout where they're going to have to score 10, 12 runs to win it, because Florida's just too good, 1 through 9 in their lineup as well, for this A&M pitching staff to completely shut them down. But
the Gators have had some ups and downs, right?
Yeah, they've got some blemishes on their record, and most of it's been done in the midweek. They lost to Central Florida. They lost to Florida State. There's no shame in losing those in the midweek. They've lost some games on the weekends to St. John's, but they were in a dogfight with St. Mary's. But it's never been because they don't hit. I mean, they always hit. The biggest question marks have come when they start entering their bullpen pieces into the game, and those numbers can balloon for them quickly.
Well, they may have big numbers, but if I can do a second bank, I'm banking on the large young man from the Jewish descent to go out and throw a strong outing again today. I don't know if he's going to keep that 0.00 ERA, the equivalent to John Blutarski's GPA, but I'm sold on it.
John Blutarski and Olin Buchanan, they share a lot of things, including a GPA. Olin, thanks, man.
0.00. Yes, sir.
We look forward to hearing from you tonight. That's Olin Buchanan live from the Courtyard by Marriott in Brentwood, Tennessee. Room 276. If you need any debts, if Olin owes you any money, come on by. Go on by there and see him. Get it out of him before he leaves.
People that owe me money, it's going to be a line outside the door. That I owe money, I should say.
All right, when we come back, we'll go back out to the hotline and we'll talk to Mark French about this Aggie basketball team and a lot more. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Welcome back, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. I'm Ryan Brauninger, sitting inside the Rollo Insurance Studio and in the host chair for one final time before David makes his triumphant return starting next week. We'll have a lot of basketball to talk about. We're going to talk about a lot of basketball in just 1 second with our good friend Mark French, but let's go over to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Callie Garner's is sitting in there. And we had a comment on the officiating, I believe, about last night. 49 fouls in that game. 49 fouls in that game.
Yeah, which you kind of have to just acknowledge the fact that slows down the pace of the basketball game, and it's not good for the players. But Texter in Houston says the officiating was bipolar, a complete 180 from the first half, which I have to agree with.
Yep, and with that, we will welcome in on the hotline former Texas A&M basketball player and I guess Fox News contributor, Fox Business contributor, Mr. Mark French. Very well dressed this morning, Mark.
Thanks, guys. Got a couple things later this morning, so suit and tie it is today, but excited for the Aggies. This is all you can ask for, man. You get Kentucky in Nashville. It's going to be predominantly a Big Blue Nation crowd, and, you think you've probably maneuvered your way into the tournament, but, man, how sweet would it be to go get a win over them up there?
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about that game, but let's start off with last night. 80-71 win. I mentioned those 49 fouls called. It was frenetic, man. It was organized chaos, which I think, and I talked to Logan about this yesterday, Mark, I think this A&M team thrives in that kind of environment, and I think if they're going to beat Kentucky today, they got to kind of muddy it up and make it ugly. But your overall thoughts on last night?
Yeah, no, I watched the game. Again, I've just been so impressed with the emergence of Manny. I think it just does wonders for Boots and Wade. But in terms of, you're talking at the macro level, what does it need to look like and feel like? And I think the whole idea of a backroom brawl or a street fight, and it just, I think we do better as a program when it's not the prettiest. And I think, but when it's, it's kind of like a toughness game where it's, we're going to put our will upon you. Anyways, just kind of alpha male energy versus alpha male energy. I think we kind of thrive in that. And we have a lot of guys that take to that, and it just seems to bring out the best in what we have and who we have. And so I think absolutely, especially with a team like Kentucky, Bronny, I'm telling you, those guys can score. They're one of the better scoring teams I've seen in college basketball since I've been around and been doing this. The guards are really good. But, yeah, in terms of Ole Miss, beating a team back-to-back, especially a Chris Beard team, shows a lot of maturity. I think they deserve credit for that. That's hard. Your season's on the line. You've probably been in a baseball situation like that, playing back-to-back, and, you got to have it. And they went and did it, and I'm proud of them.
Can you accurately qualify what Anderson Garcia means to this team and the type of player that he is? Because I was trying to write superlatives for him this morning in my pre-show notes, and what I could come up with, I thought that best encapsulated him, Mark, was he's this team's best bet. Like, you can count on that guy each and every night. But just I think that undersells him, because when you watch him, it's an incredible just watching him feel for the game and be active on the glass.
Yeah, no. So he's kind of if the constellation of planets is circling around something, with Aggie basketball, it's Anderson Garcia is at the center of that, right? The things that he does is rubbing off on other guys, and he's just kind of that centerpiece that allows everything else to fall into place, because the grunt work he does, man, 14 rebounds last night. I mean, come on, man. This is out of hand. And I've had a couple NBA buddies ask about it, because they, hey man, can that guy, if he could develop a jumper, this guy could play. And so Anderson Garcia is a heck of a player, but I think in terms of identity and who this team is, it kind of starts with him in many ways, right? And then it filters down to Solo, and then it's going to filter down to Boots, and then we obviously know what Wade's going to do. But identity-wise, I think Andy Garcia is at the center of all things Texas A&M basketball.
Would you classify Wade's night last night as a little bit up and down roller coaster?
Yes, simply because the field goal percentage is probably a little bit lower than I like, but he's also perfect from 8 of 8 from the free throw line.
Yep.
For me, I always go first place I look is what's your assist to turnover ratio, and he was 4 to 3 last night, which is a little high for him. But it's hard to argue 20 points, and especially when you're being keyed on. So for him, I kind of I've kind of accepted and lived with, there's going to be some turnovers. That's part of what makes him who he is. There's going to be some bad shots. That's part of what makes him who he is, right? But you're going to get 20 points out of it, 15 to 20 if you allow it. So, you're kind of fine with it at the end of the day.
I actually think tonight he could have a huge night. Like, it just feels like a Wade Taylor 30-point night to me, and that would certainly go a long way in A&M winning the game. But I'll tell you what, you mentioned Manny to start a second ago. Obviously, his emergence, that was a really – you love to see it from Manny. The light kind of has come on. He's found a role in this team. And it was necessary. They had to do something different. They had to make a change. They had to get it right, and they did. But also, I think along with Manny, like alongside Manny playing well, you've seen Solo kind of up his game and start playing better. What can you explain to a basketball dummy like myself how that kind of coalesces and coincides at the same time?
Yeah, one, I think the coaching staff probably deserves some credit for sticking with Manny, and Manny probably deserves a lot of credit because you just keep chipping away at the thing, man. And by all measures, he's continued to work, and throughout the season, continue to get his shots in, continue to do individual workouts. And I think the way it happens is there's a need, and that need's getting talked about. And it's, hey, man, it was either going to be Jace Carter or Manny or Hefner. We're going to have to get 10-plus points from one of those three guys. And, arguably the most talented guy on the roster, the best prospect we have, arguably, is Manny. And he took on that role, and he's flourished. And then I think with Solo is more about he's finding ways to score now. He's always kind of affected the game, kind of like Manny, kind of in that realm. But now he's kind of like found his consistent spots to score, right? So, like, when I was playing, like, we'd break it down. I remember Admon and I sat down one day. I was like, well, if I make a 3 within the first 10 minutes and I get 2 free throws and I'm going to get a steal and a layup, there's 7 points. That's the first half. And then you can break down the second half. Well, I'm going to get, I'm going to have a couple drives. I'm probably going to shoot 2 to 4 free throws and I'm going to hit 1 more 3. Well, there's my 17 points. And you can kind of break it down. And so with Solo, he's kind of found, all right, I'm going to get 4 to 6 points off offensive rebounds. I'm going to shoot, I'm going to go 3 of 5 from the free throw line. And then there's going to be a couple miscellaneous fast break plays where I'm going to get a breakaway dunk. And so I think he's finding ways which he can consistently score. And I think that's why you've seen his numbers be, more steady. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And I also think, too, it's magnified because of the point of the season that we're in, that everything's important. Like every minute, every possession's important right now because you're playing for something. Your season's on the line potentially today against Kentucky. But what I said to Logan yesterday is, like, it's important that Jace Carter comes in and gives you good minutes. He did yesterday. Wildens Levesque, I thought, gave them good minutes yesterday. How important is that going to be, those bench guys? Because you can't run out. It can't be 40 minutes of Wade, Boots, Solo, Andy, and Manny against Kentucky. You just wear down. So some of these 6th, 7th, 8th on the bench guys have got to give you quality when they come in the game.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think it comes down to Jace Carter. The more I've looked at this, 10 ways from Sunday, but it's Jace Carter or Hefner. Someone's got to give you – it's really not even the points. I mean, if you can give me 5 to 8 points, well, that's amazing. It's really about, can I trust you defensively? Are you not going to kick the ball off your foot and give them a live ball turnover that they're going to turn into some massive dunk and the crowd's going to go nuts? And then we got to weather the storm for the next 3 minutes to settle things down. And so there's a maturity aspect that you're looking for in these guys that aren't the main guys, but they got to play. You got to get minutes somewhere. And so I think, obviously, you can circle Jace Carter. Henry, I don't even know what's going on. So I'm really not sure we should count on more than 5 to 10 minutes from him. But it's Jace, it's Hef, and it's Levesque. Levesque had 9 minutes the other night. But the reality is, you kind of have those core 5 right now, and then you got to have 1 or 2 others. But they'll be fine, man. They're college guys. If they need to play 35 minutes, okay. It's really about the timing of the breaks. And so if you have a media timeout coming up, and we have a dead ball at the 5-minute mark and we got a 4-minute media timeout coming, that's when you pull Wade out. Hey, man, get you a minute here plus the minute and a half, and then you're going right back in. Mm-hmm. And so it's really about managing the game as much as it is the minutes that show up on the box score.
All right, so from your purview, perched high atop the city there, what's the recipe look like to beat Kentucky today?
It's a great question. I think I'm going to just circle those 3 guards and say you got to get me. So they had 60 last night combined points, and I think you probably need to be in that, probably 60 range with those guys, 60 to 65 points. But if I were to go deeper, like, for instance, Andy had 8 offensive rebounds last night. 8. Solo had 3. Boots had 2. To me, this is a classic, are your stars going to show up? And I think our stars can be, look, Wade he can duel with Will Shepherd, right? The white point guard for Kentucky. And so for me, it's like, I kind of expect us to be hitting the offensive boards hard. So that's kind of a given at this point. I think stuff like free throws obviously is always important this time of year. But if I were to just zoom out and say what could decide the game tonight? Hey man, are our stars going to be stars? And is the big stage, the bright lights? This is fun, right? They've done this before the last 2 years. They've been in the conference tournament championship game. But are your stars going to show up? And really what that means is Wade and Boots, right? And Andy's going to do his thing. But points-wise, Wade, Boots, and now Manny. What is Manny going to do on this big stage? He's our best athlete at the guard position. Is he going to be able to get downhill, draw some fouls, maybe get some guys in foul trouble? You know what I mean?
Sure. So what is an ideal point output for A&M? If A&M scores X, you feel good about them winning the game?
Ooh, yeah, that's a tough one. Kentucky's gone over 100 points multiple times this year. I think if we got it into the 85 range, 90, that's when I'm like, this could be like a 92, 88 type game. I don't know. 80, what we did last night is not going to be enough, I don't think. I think this game's going to be in the high 80s, low 90s, if I had to guess.
And when I was talking with Olin about things we want to see, I think Boots Radford can affect the game more. I think he can, I want to see Boots Radford get in that double-double range. He had 2 rebounds last night. I think we've seen him over the course of his career affect games on the offense and defensive glass. I think we could see more of that from him because Kentucky wants to get the ball up so much.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, he had 9 rebounds last night, guys, 3 assists, 2 turnovers, 18 points. So, I mean, the one thing I would circle on Boots, if he were to have a night over night comparison, you can't go 4-16 from the field tonight, which he was last night. But we've seen him on these big stages, man, and honestly, someone's got to take the shot. So, I think rebounding for Boots is always a good indicator of how involved he was in the game because he's a great guard rebounder. I don't really look at assists as much for him, but if he could get, 18 and 10 like he did last night, and then it's really about Wade elevating. It's about Manny elevating slightly higher, and then Solo and Andy doing what they do, right? And so it's just a little bit of a step up for Wade, a little bit of a step up for Manny. Boots, do your thing, be solid. Solo and Andy go crash the boards, and then we'll see where it ends. But they're beatable. They're not – this isn't, 2017 Villanova here, guys. They're a really good team, and you'll have to play your best game arguably of the season. But, tournament seeding on the line, it's a great opportunity. Plus, it's fun, man. This is what it's all about. It's March. We're in Nashville. You got to embrace this as a competitor. It's fun.
Do you think that A&M can have a similar type of offensive, not output? Obviously, their output's going to have to be higher. But I thought last night in the game, Mark, a lot of their best look came in second phase, second opportunities on the offensive glass to kick. Do you think they're going to have to be better in their first trip down the floor with their first shot selection?
Yeah, I think for me it's more about I think shot selection is important. I think one thing that could help shot selection is focusing more instead on pace of play. I think there's a pace at which Kentucky plays that is going to force A&M to kind of be a little bit more in a flow, a little bit more I talked with Nuno about this multiple times. We're best. I don't think we're best in the half court where everything's static and we're slow bringing it up and we're trying to call a play. I think we're best in the secondary break where it's kind of a broken floor. The floor is tilted in our favor. It's like a 4-on-4 or a 5-on-5, but everybody's still kind of scrambling off of a turnover, even off a make. You can kind of push, and instead of stopping and saying, all right, let's set up and run something, what you're doing is you're flowing right into it, right? And these kind of broken plays, these broken floors that these guards are great at exploiting, and they kind of probe and attack. And then the beautiful part about broken floors is that when the guards get downhill, the opponent's big usually comes over to help. Well, what does that open up us to do? It opens up the big for us. His man left to go try to block the shot. He's on the backside ready for the offensive rebound, right? And so a lot of that, one of the biggest things I've looked for the last month of the season when it comes to A&M is this pace of play and playing out of secondary transition as opposed to half-court offense. And I think that's what there's going to have to be a lot tonight.
Yeah, it seems like to me, and I'm a very novice basketball watcher, and there are people that are going to be driving around in their cars or sitting in their office listening to this that know the game way more, like yourself. They're going to go, Bronny's an idiot. That's not how this thing goes. But to me, my untrained eye, when I watch them play, it's like because they're so athletic, they kind of thrive in an organized chaos type of atmosphere.
Organized chaos. That's the perfect term for this team. Like literally, you nailed it, Bronny. And I think you're not giving yourself enough credit because look, sports are very similar, man. All this stuff, like the nuance of how it happens is different, but the common threads are all the same, right? It's like why does an offense, the ones that have to go get in the huddle every time, we're going to call this complex offense. We saw this last 3 or 4 years in football versus, hey man, we got the first down. Let's get right back up and let's hand it off to Quinshon Judkins for another 6 yards. And there's this momentum snowball that happens when A&M's playing in that controlled chaos, and they just thrive off of it, right? And so broken plays, forcing a lot of turnovers, obviously offensive rebounds, that's when they're at their best. And I think you want chaos if you're A&M, especially tonight.
All right, last thing, we'll let you go. Lunardi has the Aggies as the last team in as of this morning. As I've said, very precarious spot to be in. So knowing that, do you think the outcome of this game, if A&M loses tonight, are they out? Is this a must-win game?
If you want to have complete confidence, it's a must-win. But I think there's a world in which they could lose this game and they're in. I think the one thing you can't do is there can't be any blowouts, right? So style points matter at this point. Like even Lunardi last night was talking about, well, they beat Ole Miss, but it wasn't the prettiest or whatever. It's like, all right, dude, like, come on now. But I think we're in a good spot. I think some of it depends obviously on what goes on with the rest of these teams. Seton Hall, Colorado, UVA last night, New Mexico, Pittsburgh is a team that has gained a lot of momentum. I know Van Pelt and not Seth Davis, who was on there last night. Seth Greenberg, we're talking about Pittsburgh last night, kind of a late season surge. So really, I mean, let's just win and not have to worry about it, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that take a lot off of everybody's plate. I'm sure in the basketball offices as well here at TexAgs. But Mark, really appreciate you, man. You look sharp. I hope you do well in your meetings.
Thanks, brother. It was great to see you. Go get them tonight.
Yeah, take care. All right, that's former Aggie basketball player Mark French. When we come back, shifting gears, going to the Diamond. Aggies traveling to Florida. We'll have the baseball bunch in, including myself, to talk about it as we start SEC play tonight down there in Gainesville. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, right back here, and we're switching it up. From basketball to baseball, Texas A&M on the road starting tonight, 6:30 p.m. Central. They start their 3-game set with the Florida Gators, a top 10 showdown there in Gainesville. I'm Ryan Brauninger, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We got the baseball bunch here with me, Scott Clendenin, Richard Zane. Aggies, like we've talked a lot about, this is an opening to conference play, but also I think before we dive into that, Scotty, we got to talk about just the last week. And really, I wanted to start talking about Tuesday night because we've mentioned it with Coach Schlossnagle. I heard your interview with him on the Zone yesterday. The A&M fan base deserves some kudos for their performance on Tuesday night and really throughout the course of the season so far.
No doubt about it. They opened up Section 12 early because I knew the students were gone. You had concessions out there. They treated it like, hey, you can go out there, have a great time, try to catch a home run, but, you're hitting them 470 feet the wrong way. So, but no, it was great. They were into it. The only time I ever had words with somebody outside of Longhorn fans was Tuesday nights against Sam Houston when I was younger.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now,
I thought you meant last Tuesday.
No, I mean, there was an inning where A&M scored like 8 runs in the first inning, and somebody walked up to me and said, "What happened?" And I said, "Sam Houston finally threw a strike, and it was a grand slam." And somebody's dad got mad at me.
Oh.
Okay, that's sitting in the stands.
Well, I'm glad you've calmed down.
That's a pretty good chirp.
Yeah, it is a good
well,
chirp.
It is. He should have taught his son how to throw a changeup. But anyway, that's beside the point. So it had a great atmosphere because Sam comes. For them to come over during spring break for them showed that, you've got some magnetism with this team. They'd had a great weekend. They should have beat Houston the week before. Yannick, I don't know if you know about the play Yannick missed for them to lose to Houston.
No, but him missing any play is
He picked up a ball. There was a bunt, top spin at the plate. He picks it up to throw to second base and throws it into the outfield because the infielders don't get there in time. He's going to do a double play to end the game. It goes for 2 runs.
Wow.
To lose 2-1. So your best player makes an outstanding play and you lose. That also goes to what Coach Schlossnagle had to say yesterday about how hard it is to win games in baseball.
Yeah.
But it was great. It needs to carry on like that. I think that it's going to be kind of hard next Wednesday, but you still have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, a huge week with national TV audience. Going to show up. It's going to be a great atmosphere going forward.
Richard, back-to-back wins with Olsen Magic. Just your thoughts on the Sunday, Rhode Island, Tuesday against Sam and the atmospheres we've seen at Olsen.
Yeah, to go off of what Scott has said, the crowds have been incredible. And Sunday and Tuesday, the Ags had their backs up against the wall. Obviously, they were down 4 runs after 7 innings in the finale against Rhode Island. Never once did I feel like A&M was going to lose that game, and I didn't feel like the crowd at Bluebell Park thought A&M was going to lose that game.
No, they did a great job of willing both.
Yes,
both
they were going to do whatever it took to get in the minds of the pitchers, the minds of the first base dugout, whatever it took to help will their team to victory, and they did it in back-to-back evenings or games. It was fantastic to see. It was loud in there against Rhode Island and Sam Houston. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Yeah,
I couldn't be more proud of the crowds that have shown up at Bluebell Park so far this year.
It seems to me the fan base is taking ownership of this team. It matters to them like that this ball club retains that unbeaten streak. And it's going to be really hard to keep doing that, especially when you go on the road to Florida. But they can always have that home winning streak, right? And it matters to Section 202 and 203 and the rest of the 12th man inside the stadium that this team wins the game. So how can we help? Okay, there has been hardly any adversity through the first 3 or 4 weeks, especially at home. How can we help pull our team through this? That was the mentality that I felt like the fan base took. Hey, this is our chance these guys have kind of carried us. We can jump on their back and try to pull them out of it now.
Well, you talk about wanting to continue a home winning streak. Florida has won 12 of their last 14 home series. I think that, and a lot of that has to do with the elite talent that Kevin O'Sullivan has assembled. Coach Schlossnagle and his coaching staff are also assembling elite talent, but when you had that elite talent with an incredible atmosphere and a tough place to play for opponents, you could see the Aggies rip off a run like that as well.
Yeah, Scotty, Richard mentions the elite talent. We're going to see it on both sides. This is a place where historically A&M has not done well as members of the SEC. I think the Aggies are 0-6 when they have to travel to Gainesville. When you start taking inventory and doing some examinations of this series, where do you think off the top that A&M can find some success at a ballpark that's been pretty rude to them?
2 of the 3 starters have not been really good for Florida. I mean, you're talking about Fisher and Peterson have not been out there, have not had success. They've got losses. They've got no decisions. It wasn't because of pitch count. I mean, it's not like they went to get somebody early. They just haven't pitched well. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be locked in when A&M comes, because obviously the focus for them will be much greater. The Haas is at the back end of the bullpen. I mean, back end of the starting rotation. But A&M can run Lampkin out there. It's not like it's a regular Sunday start if Lampkin and Caglione pitch at their regular level. It can be a great Sunday ball game, but they're going to score runs. They have an offense, which surprising. Caglione's their leading hitter, but he's not their leading home run guy, not their leading RBI guy, not the guy on the longest hit streak. They have other offensive pieces. You look at, they lose Wyatt Langford, and their outfield doesn't even take a step back. And that guy might break with the Rangers this year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they are loading again and again and again. And I don't know, even in the SEC, if you're going to have 6 outfielders as talented on the field, as you can see in this game, as far as what they project and where they could end up being in the future, because I don't know where Caglione's if he's going to spend some time in the outfield or not. If he was in the outfield, they would be 6, no better anywhere.
Richard Schloss said that they were using Tuesday night as essentially as a tryout for the travel roster, and some guys covered themselves in glory. Some guys kind of left the coaches scratching their head about what they were going to do with them going forward. The same can be said, I think. Look, in today's era of college baseball, if you're expecting to go 7, 8, 9 arms deep in your bullpen of elite guys, it doesn't happen anymore. Nobody does that. And Coach Schlossnagle has been made multiple media appearances this week where he talked about, look, the average amount of runs scored in an SEC game is 10. What LSU won the national championship and had a team ERA of around 5 with Paul Skeens.
Yeah, and it was like 6 when he didn't pitch.
And so, like,
Paul Skeens.
That's why I think, Richard, at some point this weekend, one of these games is going to be a shootout.
Oh, I mean, I anticipate multiple games being a shootout, to be completely honest with you, and it'll be interesting to see how Texas A&M's pitching staff handles that, because they really haven't been in that type of situation outside of that Sunday finale against Rhode Island. So how does a guy like Ryan Prager or Tanner Jones or Justin Lampkin handle it when they get tagged for a couple of runs in the second or third inning, or perhaps the first inning? How do they lock back in? How do they get through 4 or 5 innings to help the rest of this pitching staff for the rest of the weekend? I think A&M's got the relievers to be able to win games like that, whether it be Evan Aschenbeck, who is Jim Schlossnagle's all-time pitcher, Shane Sadeo. We need to see how he bounces back from his outing Sunday against Rhode Island. But then you've got guys like Chris Cortez. I know they're still searching for that right-handed, trusted reliever out of the bullpen. I think he can be that guy. I think that's where he's going to end up having the most value on this ball club, is being able to affect multiple games on a weekend. So it'll be interesting to see how this A&M pitching staff reacts and bounces back after they get hit around. And I think Coach Schlossnagle talked about that a little bit yesterday. If you give up a double, if you give up a home run, get right back in the strike zone and keep going to work, keep going to battle.
Yeah, you may get bloodied with a crooked number, but it's about getting back in there and still not being afraid to throw the ball over the plate. Don't let Florida's offensive success take you out of your mantra of dominate the zone. I think that's a huge, not for just this weekend, I think that's a huge kind of thing to look at and analyze as we go forward in SEC play, is getting beat up in the strike zone make you shy away from throwing the ball in there, because it's not the homers that are going to hurt you. No. It's the walk before and after the homer that'll hurt you.
Well, that's why, Walker Yannick's home run in the 9th inning tied it, because you had finally had one of those innings. A guy came off as a leadoff guy. But, Cortez had stayed away from walking batters. And, but a huge number for me, when's the last time at this point in the season you look over at Florida and their pitching staff, they don't have a save?
Yeah, they don't have a guy on the back end when he comes in. It's
Exactly.
Game over. Hunter
Now, it
McNeely,
was Fisher last year, and they had to move him in. But they haven't had anybody emerge. They haven't been in games where they need to have saves. They've either been ahead by a bunch, or they had the walk-off like they had against St. Mary's on Friday night last week, or their bullpen, when they've gone to them, has not been good. Their team ERA is 5.5 with their starters and with their relievers. They're going to see a pitching staff like better than Miami. They're really the best team they had seen. And they were only able to take one game, and that's when the big guy started at the end of the series.
And if they don't have anybody trusted or tested at the back end of the bullpen, that's where I like A&M, because this offense is just going to keep coming at you. We've seen it the last couple of nights.
Yeah, when you've got to get A&M out 9 times throughout the course of the game. You got to get them out, make them – you're going to have to pitch them to them for a full 27 outs. That's really hard to do with this offense without them really, bloodying you for a big crooked number in one of those innings. It can certainly happen. We've seen A&M play a 2-0 game. We've seen them play a 4-0 game. The 6-1 game against Wagner where they didn't hit any balls hard. We've seen it happen, but it's going to be really tough over the course of the weekend to hold this offense from putting up big numbers, especially if you are unsure about the back end of your bullpen. And the reason why you're unsure is because they don't throw it over the plate enough. And we know what this team has done since Michael Early and Jim Schlossnagle have been here is they will let you throw 4 balls to them, and they will go down to first base. And that is how a lot of their big offensive innings have huge key walks in the middle of them. It's not double, double, homer, single, double, homer. It's walk, walk, double, homer, single, walk, walk, and then you're looking up, and this is our third pitcher of the inning.
Yeah, and Sorrell's, look at how he's matured in the last week from having a big strikeout in a key situation to have
Kent.
and have
Kent's
2
walking
walks
more than he strikes out.
Exactly. So guys are learning. Guys are that are newcomers. Kent, I think Kent understands. And has some of that in it, because one of those at bats was an amazing deep. Foul a bunch of pitches off at bat. That's the other thing that this team will do is we will make you work and we will elevate pitch counts. And I thought at the beginning of last year, remember we talked about how the pitch clock and things like that, and A&M just didn't seem like they had been the previous year. The middle to end of the season, they'd adjusted to that, and they started raising those pitch counts of pitchers against them again and started getting those walks. I mean, nobody even talks about that anymore because everybody adjusted. But I thought, in conference play going forward, that's when A&M started to look like they did the year before with Michael Early.
All right, we're late for a break. We come back, we're going to continue to look at this series. Texas A&M travels to Florida. We'll also have Nick De La Torre, a writer for Gators Online, here with us in the 10 o'clock hour to break down the series from his perspective down there in Gainesville. So when we come back, more of the Baseball Bunch. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, right back here. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Baseball bunch rolling along in the 9 o'clock hour on a Friday morning. Aggies and Gators from Gainesville starting tonight. 3-game set at Condren Family Ballpark. And you look at Florida offensively, Scotty, and you mentioned the overall talent. And these are names, by the way, that have had big swings either at Florida already or at other places. And I'm looking at guys like Jack Caglione. Obviously, they're calling him college Shohei Ohtani. Ty Evans, Colby Shelton, Cade Curlin, Luke Heyman, Tyler Shelnut. All these guys, outside of Colby Shelton, who was an incredible player last year for Alabama, all those guys were key figures in their run to the finals last year. This offense, A&M's going to have to pitch at the level that they have because if they start spraying the strike zone, which has been a bugaboo of theirs in these last 2 games where they've had to rally late to win, if they do that against this Florida offense, you may not have a chance to rally late because that gap may be too big.
Yeah, and you know, but I think that I look at Arizona State, which was an offensive ball club. I look at what they did against Texas, which is an offensive ball club. And then Texas goes to Lubbock, and we know how the ball can fly in Lubbock, but had a great offensive weekend right after that. They have points against talented teams, okay? But I agree that, you know, you have got to stay away from the top of their lineup having success. Probably 8-9 has not been as good as what 8-9 has been for A&M this year. And but when you're talking about the top and middle of the order, very comparable between these two teams. I mean, I think Georgia and Alabama. I looked and saw that Georgia was 151 in their strength of schedule, and Alabama was 136. They feasted on some teams that have not pitched well against them. So, excuse me. I think that 1 through 6 though, and how do you get Prager? The third time through the lineup? Are you going to trust Jones a third time through? Can Lampkin, have success 2 times through, and maybe you're seeing that third time through? That's going to be a big key. Do they have something, different to show somebody a second or third time? I think that Prager obviously has this year, but some of those other guys, you don't want to be in the 4th inning and you're starting to see 3, 4, 5 for the third time against the Aggies.
Richard, it's going to be really interesting to see how Jim Schlossnagle utilizes the bullpen, most specifically Evan Aschenbeck and Shane Sadeo. If he gets into a scenario tonight where he brings Aschenbeck in the 5th, 6th inning and he can win you a game, you got to let him win you a game.
Absolutely.
You have to.
Absolutely.
But ideally, I think you'd like to get into situations where you have the option to use both of those guys multiple times in the course of a series.
Well, ideally, Ryan Prager goes out and gives you 7 more scoreless innings tonight, and that has your bullpen set up for Saturday and Sunday, especially when you got to kind of match your third starter against who has been Florida's best starter in Caglione. But yeah, absolutely. If you have to use Aschenbeck today to win the ball game, I don't think he'd think twice about it. And if he gets that, depending on his pitch count, he would be able to come back on Sunday. And same thing goes for Sadeo. And obviously, I want to see him bounce back and get back in the groove and still have the confidence he was pitching with before he had that outing against Rhode Island. So I think Coach Schlossnagle has a couple of options he can turn to out of his bullpen if he needs to lock up a Friday night win tonight. And he can also go back to some guys who have shown that they are capable. They just have to do it against really good competition for the first time.
I think Brad Rudis, Josh Stewart, Brock Peary, those are 3 guys where you're looking in the middle of that A&M bullpen and going, they could make or break some of these series, because if they're good, if they're going to pitch the way they have, Scotty, that is first of all, it gets right-handers late. It gives you right-handed options late. But second of all, Brad, Josh, and even Brock's maybe a little bit different, but Brad and Josh can give you some length because they throw strikes.
Well, and I think that Peary, and one of the things I liked about Tuesday and talked about it during the game was he got some left-handers out. If you've got a stretch where you've got a 4-batter thing and there's one left-hander in that, if he can get one left-hander out, or limit damage to one left-hander with his, with his sidearm and submarine delivery, then you don't have to go use a left-hander for one guy when you have right-handers after it. And I think that, that's one of the things he's getting a little bit better at, and that's big for this team is not only can he do it, but do you have confidence that he can do that? And I think that he's growing into that role a little bit more.
And I also got a big amount of confidence on Tuesday night from Isaac Morton's outing. Like that kid, he looks like the stuff, his body, the way he throws the ball, he looks like a future front-end SEC starter. And for him to go out there against a good offensive club, good ball club in general in Sam Houston, and have success like he did, I think he becomes another legitimate option in leverage situations out of the bullpen on the weekend. I was really encouraged by Isaac Morton. But we need to switch gears a little bit and talk about what happens offensively. Florida is very left-handed. 2 out of the 3 starters are going to be left-handed. We saw Ryan Targach hit right-handed. I know that's the thing that felt the best for him in that wrist going into this week. Jim Schlossnagle said he hit from both sides of the plate in the sim game. He also threw. Scotty, where do we see the lineup with a left-handed starter and we know that Teddy Burton is going to be, it was kind of precautionary while they took him out the other night. There's some interesting decisions still to be made with what happens in the DH spot. I think Caden Kent's your second baseman until something happens, like he earned that spot. But there are some interesting decisions to be made at first base, DH, and even in the outfield. Well,
and would you be in a position where Burton was at first base and had to go play second base for a short period of time if you had to get a right-hander in, if you adjusted the lineup, if you did have a lefty at first base where, so I think that they have a little bit of flexibility, but second base, most of your guys are left-handed. Hank Bard being a left-handed catcher as a DH where he's shown you something with the bat. This kind of takes him out of the mix a little bit,
to start games.
Yeah. But, does Coffer have a weekend where he has a little bit different role, maybe not behind the plate? They don't want to get in the position where they lose a DH in a game. Mm-hmm. So that's always somebody you have to have, that is tucked away, especially if Kent is playing in the field. Or, because Kent might still be your emergency catcher like he was last year. So they've got a little bit of flexibility, but I think it's huge that Targach has some success and can bat right-handed, because he is the guy that when he has got it going, mainly it's left-handed with the light tower power. But he still has plenty of power from the right-hand side to drive the ball in that ballpark.
And he was going pretty well before he got injured, Richard.
And I do think he might be the key to this weekend offensively if he can DH and that gives you. I actually asked Coach Schlossnagle this same question yesterday at the press conference. It's like, how do you think your offense is built to handle left-handed pitching? When healthy, he's got 3 switch hitters in this lineup with Montgomery, Appel, and Targach. And I think Targach, if he's able to go and able to play consistently in the 3 games this weekend, I think he's the key, because it allows you to have Bard on the bench for a pinch hitting opportunity against right-handed pitchers later in the game. And if he's healthy, Ryan Targach, and he's the right Ryan Targach, he's another really high impact bat down the lineup.
Well, and another thing you have to think about, Scotty, you brought up Caden Sorrell earlier and the quality of his at-bats coming off the bench. If they give him a start, could it be in that Saturday game? And actually you could DH Braden Montgomery, who gives you now the option to come in and pitch out of the bullpen.
And the other thing I want to say about Braden Montgomery is, I've been here long enough to see the really good switch hitters. His stroke from the right-hand side, because we haven't seen as many left-handed, might be underrated. I mean, we have seen so much with his left-handed swings. His right-handed side, there is no drop-off on either side of those, especially when you get in this league where there are some switch hitters that have a stronger side. It's flawless on both sides. We saw the power that he showed, up in Arlington from the right-hand side. We've seen it here at Olsen Field. His what he does to protect behind Lavalette, who has gotten better at it. The coach talked about it yesterday that he's gotten better at it. But his ability to switch is a huge role with what they do against Florida, because it might not be righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, but those switch guys in the middle can give you all of a sudden 3 left-handers in a row if you go to right-handed in the bullpen for Florida.
This lineup is really incredibly balanced from a right-left switch situation. I think it's incredible.
One of the things that I think will be key this weekend for the Aggie offense is, what do those bottom 3 spots in the order do? Who's manning them? First of all, I think 8 and 9 is going to be Camarillo and Kent. Who's in the 7 hole? Probably in that DH spot. can they just keep the line moving? If it's somebody like Targott, and look, Hank's been good too. I don't want to sit here and act like we're not giving Hank the proper credit.
No, it's been much better this year.
Yeah, he's been really good. But if those guys, if Florida can't get those guys out, it could be a long weekend for their pitching staff because they're just not deep enough to have to throw they're not deep enough to have to face this lineup over and over and over again. But they could really put themselves in some tight spots if they're going to put the bottom three on base.
And that's what I really like about the last couple of days for Camarillo, right? He was struggling, kind of slumping. I think he's had multiple hits in back-to-back games. He's been working walks. Caden Kent's been working walks. Obviously, the game-winning walk on Tuesday night. I mean, they're putting together better at-bats, and that's going to be key.
And it makes Grahovic not a leadoff hitter anymore, but an RBI producer when those two guys are on in front of him. And his right-handedness against Gators later in games is going to be huge.
All right, that's the baseball bunch. Aggies and Gators start tonight from Gainesville. You're listening to TexAgs Radio. We'll be right back on the other side of the break. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, going really quickly around Aggieland. Presented by Norman G. State Bank. For rock-solid banking, visit normangstatebank.com. And with that, we welcome in the lovely Kay Naegeli.
Can you just do this hand motion?
Let's go. You've got about 2 minutes.
I got it. So let's start off with some football. I haven't talked any football today. Pro Day was announced. It will be next Tuesday. lot of different Aggies will be participating. You can find that list on Around Aggieland on our website. And then also some additional participants like Kellen Mond, Jalen Preston, Andre White Jr. will also be participating on Tuesday. Moving on to some basketball, Texas A&M took another step forward, solidifying its postseason position in the NCAA tournament field with the 80-71 win over Ole Miss in the second round of the SEC tournament yesterday. They will face second-seeded Kentucky tonight, 6 p.m. on SEC Network in the quarterfinals. Right now, as we know, Joe Lunardi has them in, but who knows with this whole bracketology mess. Same for Jody Taylor's Aggies. They are also in the projected tournament, but again, never know. And then baseball, y'all just talked about it. A&M will face number 8 Florida in its SEC opener. Softball also has a big one. They will have a top 25 series against number 21 Mississippi State. Also got some track and field, women's golf, and tennis all going on this weekend, and you can find those things on our site. So, good job. Woo!
That was quick.
I'm
really
ready.
good. You didn't go into too many details. That's pretty cool that Kellen Mond is coming back and Jalen Preston.
Getting to show off some skills.
Great dudes that I think have earned a respect from a lot of the A&M fan base, and cool to see them coming back under Mike Elko. All right. Ending the 9 o'clock hour now. When we come back, we'll have Billy Liucci, TexAgs executive editor and co-owner from Nashville, or we should, on the phone. You know how these things go with Billy, but he did give me a heart on my text this morning that he would be here. But a lot more to get to: basketball, baseball, all things Texas A&M sports going into a busy weekend. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, final hour of the show on a Friday morning. Ryan Brauninger in the host chair. TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, inside the Rollo Insurance Studios. What did I just do? I'm looking at my computer. I may have said something twice. Anyway, whatever. We got TexAgs co-owner and executive editor Billy Liucci on the hotline from Nashville, Tennessee. Luch, good morning.
Morning, Brian. You Nuno'd that one.
I did. I tried to. I take. He's a shining example in this host chair. You end up talking like him sometimes.
There's a reason I don't do it. There's a reason I don't do it. It ain't easy.
Well, it ain't easy being you in Nashville, huh? You're getting pulled by celebrities to go do hits and different types of things, and you're there trying to watch hoops.
Yeah, I watched hoops for felt like 4 hours at that final minute or two, but yeah, that was 2 hours of my night. Unfortunately, right now the count is Nashville 1, Liucci 0, as I'm wandering the streets looking for coffee and a little breakfast, and I kind of thought about dipping in, Brony, because I'm right here by the Country Music Hall of Fame, which of all my trips here, I mean, I've been here a ton, but several times, and have never seen it.
Well, you should go in there. You might learn some things about real country music as opposed to the stuff you listen to.
I think we know who listens to the fake stuff and who doesn't.
Well, what did you think?
There's a lot of things I'll criticize you on, Bronny, but one of them, it will not be your taste in country music.
All right. Well, what did you think of the way Buzz's Bunches looked last night? It was frenetic, 80-71 win, really choppy, 49 fouls called throughout the duration of the night.
Yeah.
Again, right now, I don't know. Does it matter how it looks as long as you get a win?
No, it does not. And I think we all know they weren't getting in if they lost that game last night. That doesn't mean they're in by any stretch of the imagination, but we all knew they had to win yesterday. And I was sitting right behind the bench, and you could sense that urgency. And Ole Miss mucked it up, but those are two teams that aren't scared. With Buzz Williams and Chris Beard, those two coaches will coach and let their teams play a physical brand of basketball. And truth be told, A&M's usually going to win that kind of fight. Whether it's Tennessee, what we saw at Reed, or whether it's at Kentucky, like if you let them play that kind of game, A&M's comfortable there. It's why I'm going to be pretty interested in this Mississippi State-Tennessee game here in a little bit that I'm going to go to. Another really physical team in Mississippi State. But that was a weird game, wasn't it? Like, it felt like once the first half went by, and there weren't very many fouls called at all in the first half, but once the first half went by, I kind of was getting to a point where I'm going, all right, this is going to be one of those down to the last couple possession games. So, buckle up. The Aggies weren't hitting outside shots, but they were playing hard. And when that's going on against a team like Ole Miss, I thought it was going to be a down to the wire. Next thing you know, Solomon hits a three, he gets a dunk, and you're sitting here going, okay, this thing's probably, if they don't call Wade Taylor for a foul on that steal he had for the breakaway layup that would have put him up 15, I thought it was that close to being over. But man, that last couple minutes was tough to get through. And the crazy thing is, the Aggies hit so many of their free throws there, thank God. But the team that struggled with that earlier in the year was just burying them pretty much every time up to the line. I know Boots had the two misses that shocked you, but I thought, that I don't know what they were doing defensively there at the end, letting Ole Miss score in 3 seconds every time. But they hung on, they won, they were the better team last night, and they proved it. They needed to. So I don't know what y'all been talking about this morning. I saw the televangelist went mass panic this morning on the bubble on the wrong way, right? But I got one thought on this, Bronny, and then whatever you want to ask or talk about. But my thought on this is this. 2 years ago, we were certain the 8-game winning streak and rolling through the SEC tournament to the final was going to get them in. And they might have been the first, might have been the second team out. They just missed it. And we all start going, well, the SEC tournament games don't matter. No, the reality is we were way off on how far the Aggies were coming back from. And when we thought they were in, they were really after they beat like Arkansas or whoever, they were further off than we thought. They beat Auburn. Last year, when they were a 7 seed, we were all shocked, including me, including you, every fan, Buzz, everybody. Well, they were a lot further off before that run to the final. I mean, they were in the field, but they might have been a 10 seed that played their way to a 7. As hard as that is for us to believe, my point is we've been wrong twice as fans, as media. I mean, Buzz, in terms of where he thought his team would be. And so what did Buzz do? He went and scheduled a hell of a lot tougher. And they've gotten a couple really meaningful wins, 3 to be exact, and the Florida one's looming large right now too, especially if they could win one more. But they kind of did what they hadn't done the last 2 years in terms of scheduling. And maybe, just maybe, the opposite is happening this year. And maybe A&M is, I'm not saying they're a 7 seed, but maybe they're a little more into that field than Lenardi's last team in. Maybe they're a little more into that field to where thinking yesterday was just this epic disaster in terms of everyone you needed to lose winning. Maybe not. And my point is we've been wrong about this from top to bottom, and I'm talking about all of us. Maybe we're wrong again. And if we are, this time that would be a good thing. So obviously, I'm convinced if they win today, they're in. If they win tonight over Kentucky, you cannot convince me they're not in. If they lose tonight, I think, just like I said before the tournament, I think you are sweating it on Selection Sunday. But I also don't think you just give up hope right now and assume that A&M has to win tonight to get in, because we have assumed for the last 2 years, and we have all looked like, they're saying.
Well, let me ask you this, Billy. You've been watching Aggie basketball a long time. Where does Anderson Garcia stack up in terms of like just those glue guys? Because I think of him, he's not like, I think he's more like of a Brian Davis or, not the star of the team, but you look at the group and you're going, if they don't have this guy, they don't have the success that they're having. Yeah.
Well, I got into it with Logan and the all-knowing Richard Oz Zane the other day. And Oz was trying to tell me that, no one on this team would be like Aggie legend. And on the radio show, Nuno and OB, I think it was, maybe, I don't know who he was with, but went up and down the list and named about 8 guys on this team that are legends. And I think that the answer is somewhere in between. I think Wade Taylor is an Aggie legend. And some people, are trying to tell me, and by the way, he also has one more season. Wade is certainly on that list. I think he's after only with one more year left, he's a top 15, if not top 10. I think top 10 Aggie player of all time. And someone said, well, where are the wins with no tournament wins yet? Okay. I name you a lot of figures in A&M basketball history that didn't have tournament wins. And the guy was the SEC first team all conference 2 years already. There's absolutely plenty of memorable moments with him. A team that's gone to the conference final twice in his 3 seasons, which doesn't happen very often around here if the historians haven't forgotten. I think Wade Taylor's absolutely on that list. And when it comes to Anderson Garcia, damn, man. I mean, Brian Davis, I think, is a good example. But what he's doing, not to say an all-time Aggie legend, but first of all, Andy can return. Keep that in mind, too. But the numbers he's going to put up as a rebounder, I mean, I do think, we don't want to throw the word legend around too loosely, but he's a guy that everyone's going to fondly remember when you talk. And remember, Aggie. Now you want this team to do something. So guys like him and Wade, like, damn, remember that Sweet 16 run with them? Or you remember, you want this team. Remember when they won the SEC tournament? Something like that's kind of unforgettable. But what I'm going to remember Andy as, and I think especially after he does it all over again next year, is this guy's going to be, I think we're going to talk about him as the best rebounder in the history of Texas A&M basketball. I don't really care what the numbers say, and I haven't looked, Ronnie. I'd like to see where he tracks as he returns. Remember, he started his career somewhere else, so those numbers would be skewed. I've never seen a player in maroon and white as skilled, and we don't think of that as, a lot of times as a skill. You know, I grew up watching 80s and 90s basketball where it's Charles Oakley and, you know, Otis Thorpe, and, you know, everybody had their designated rebounder. Dennis Rodman, obviously, Buzz has mentioned him several times. But I think the dude, it is a skill. It is an uncoachable feel that he's got. There's a work ethic. But when him and Solomon get going, not only do they pick up like guys like Levesque and Coleman when he's in there, like not only do they get those guys going, but man, you sit there on the court, you know, and you know where I sit at the home games, and when you see them demoralize opponents on the glass, and that doesn't happen a whole lot in basketball. And you see them physically wear teams down, demoralize them. People I talked to last night that were at the game that haven't watched a lot of A&M in person. I had no fewer than 3 people mention that to me last night afterwards. Like, God, you guys are so damn physical. And, you know, obviously that's a high-end compliment, and it's how they're going to have to play tonight because they're going to have to fight and scrap for all of it. I see no world in which A&M beats Kentucky in a similar game that they beat them at Reed Arena. Now, I don't think up and down and scoring and Wade putting up 35 or whatever it was, and the Aggies hitting a ton of shots. I think they're going to have to win this one grimy and gritty and take Kentucky as out of their game as they can. And physical is going to be the word. I don't think they're going to win unless, you know, Cal's sitting after the game with all his excuses, but also saying that team's just so damn physical. You know, they wore us out. There are 2 teams today that if they win, the opposing coach is going to say that amidst all the excuses, and that's A&M and Mississippi State, and that's, you know, the 2 of the biggest whiners in the league, in Cal and Rick Barnes. So we'll see, though. They also have right now what look like the 2 best teams in the conference in those 2. So could it be an upset Friday here? I don't know. There's a lot of games I'm interested in, including that one right after ours, Alabama and Florida. That should be a great one as well.
You know, it's interesting you say that, Billy, because I was asking Mark French, give me a number. Like, where do you think A&M offensively, what kind of output do they have to have where you're going, okay, we can win the game in that range? And he thought they needed to get closer to 85 or 90, but even asking them to get north of that with just the way this roster's built, it's going to be really tough. But what Mark did say, and I think you would kind of echo this in a different manner, if you want to win tonight, your stars need to be stars. You got to get a star effort out of Wade and Boots.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to have to. Look, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying A&M's going to need to win, you know, like they did with the shot and AC Law. Was that 52-50? You know, we're not going back to the Billy Clyde days when Buzz was sitting there on the bench. Or I'm saying, though, I think they've got to do something to really make Kentucky feel this game. Make them feel the physicality, take them out of their game a little bit. And as a result of that, I think I'm talking about not letting Kentucky get second shot, not letting, making them miss shots with your physicality, making them not want to go in there and take the contact. And, man, but absolutely, you're not winning tonight either if Wade and Boots aren't having a good game. And it's not just about them getting to the basket. When they have the open opportunities, they have to hit them. But man, I'm tell you what, the one guy, or the 2 guys that are the X factors and have been the X factors for A&M have been Solo and Manny. I mean, last night watching Manny get to the basket, he's out there, driving to the basket. I don't know who I'm trying to think of, like an old school, like Stacey Augmon from the UNLV days, or the way he's swooping to the basket right now. It's really fun to watch, but it's hard to stop. he kind of hangs in the air so long, and he's so long-limbed, and he can kind of throw it up there from any angle. He's doing a great job of getting fouled. He's so damn confident, and he's changed the entire trajectory of this basketball team. And he is the guy that athletically can run up and down and do things that, you know, pretty much all of that Kentucky roster can do and has been able to do since Cal got there. On the flip side, you know, what Solo's doing athletically is he can guard damn near anyone out there. He's a problem, man. He is a problem for the other team. On the glass, put back. He just sets such a tone of toughness. He and Andy, they set such a tone of toughness for this team. But those two guys, the way they're playing right now, they're the X factors. And if they keep playing like they have, A&M will have a chance to win. And now, if Wade and Boots are hitting the outside shots and getting to the basket and drawing fouls like we know they can do, if they do that, that's an A&M win, and I feel comfortable saying it. That to me, Brony, that's not how they hang in there. To me, that's an Aggie win. You know, I think A&M wins if those two guys have a game.
Billy, really important game on the hardwood tonight, but also a pretty important baseball series happening down in Gainesville. Have you thought any about what Schloss and his guys are going to be facing in Florida, and just kind of your expectations for what you're going to see from, you know, obviously they're not going to win all of their games, but they got a chance to go on the road and make a statement here to a lot of folks that are skeptical still about them because of the schedule they've played.
Yeah, and I think, look, if you want to tell me the skepticism, I'll tell you why. If I'm not doing what I do, if you and I don't follow this team that closely, you and Oz, if we don't follow the team that closely, and the Gobbler, if I took a step back, I would say, I don't think A&M, I saw the deal yesterday, A&M should be ranked number one. I don't think they should be ranked number one right now. I think if they swept this weekend in Gainesville, they should be. I think if they won 2 out of 3, they better move way up there in that ranking and be knocking on the door of one. But I get it. Like, when you look at the schedule and you look at teams that, you know, played tougher, but you watch baseball, man, and you know teams' weaknesses and strengths, and you know guys that are elite at the plate, and you know good pitching when you see it. And this is a team that, to me, is really impressive. They're built for Omaha. They have a look of one. They are one of those teams that have the tools and the depth and the experience and the power and the lineup and the pitching depth, like we said. I mean, there's obviously things you want to find. He says himself, Flosh does. He's looking for, you know, a right-hander with some crap on the ball, you know, out of the bullpen there. They're going to need that on weekends against SEC competition. There's a little concern for me that, you know, these pitchers haven't faced. That, to me, is the biggest thing, is they haven't faced the lineup. That, you know, Texas, I don't think they'd rate very high in the SEC right now. I'm not sure Sam Houston, I'd like to see Texas Sam Houston 3-game series. You saw what Sam did to Texas State, who we know is good. But, you know, in the last couple games, they've given up a lot of runs. And they haven't really been tested by some, you know, quality lineups yet. Maybe Arizona State can hit. I think we know Sam Houston can get up there and rate. But that's about it. Texas, you know, they've had some games where they've exploded. That's Texas Tech. So you're talking about 3-4 games out of this body of work. They'll face, they'll play as many games against a daunting lineup just this weekend alone. So I think there's still questions to be answered in terms of the pitching. But damn, I do think the pitching looks the best it's looked in Slosh's 3 years here, especially at this point in the season. I don't think that's even up for debate, obviously, but and I do think Max Linger is going to end up being one of the best hires in college baseball. I'm just saying, for this weekend, like Florida, you see what's going on with their pitching staff, and like pretty much anyone else in college baseball, as you enter conference play, you can say this better than anybody, you're trying to figure out your pitching. you're still trying to see, okay, who can go into Gainesville in a tight game in the middle innings that's not named Aschenbeck and get us through it. I think they're really confident Cedeo's that guy too. But who else? And that's what he was trying to find out the other night. You heard him talk about Cortez. I think the guys he didn't mention, it was pretty obvious that he wasn't pleased with some performances. So they're still trying to find out. If they go win 2 or 3 against this club, and I know Florida haven't been world beaters yet this year, but my God, it's the Florida Gators. It's that lineup. It's in Gainesville. It's with that Sunday starter, which puts a ton of pressure on you to win Friday and Saturday. If they go win the series there, I think this team's legit anyway. They're a legit top 5 team. If they go win there, I think everyone else will realize that as well.
All right, Luch, go find you some breakfast, dude.
All right, brother.
All right, man. All right, when we come back, Callie Gardner and the Angry Elephant News and Social Center are going to take us around the bubble to update the bracket and where things stand heading into the round of conference tournament games that are about to kick off here today. So a lot more basketball, some baseball to get to with Nick De La Torre at the bottom of the hour. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, getting ready to set the bubble with Callie Garner, who's in our social center, presented by the Angry Elephant. Aggies gather at the Angry Elephant. Like your politics, love your bar. Find an Angry Elephant near you. Bryan, College Station, Magnolia, Frisco, and San Antonio. Callie, what do you got for us?
We got quite a bit, but I'm going to try to get us through it pretty fast. I'm going to start with Mississippi State just because I feel like there's a lot to compare here. Lenardi still has Mississippi State listed as a last four bye, which is 5 spots listed ahead of A&M. Their net rank is 41. A&M, last I checked, was 47. We might have gone up. Mississippi State has a strength of schedule listed at 37th. A&M is 17th. And our out-of-conference strength of schedule is also right around there, I think 18 or 19. So
and you have a head-to-head.
Yeah, you've got it all. We could spend a lot of time comparing these two teams, and there's other schools we could compare schedules with, and maybe we should. Mississippi State is a team that has mutual opponents as well as obviously the head-to-head, which A&M won. Kentucky beat Mississippi State twice. A&M has potential to beat Kentucky twice. Florida beat Mississippi State, and A&M beat Florida. Sure, Mississippi State has wins over Arkansas and Vanderbilt, but if you're being realistic, there's no Arkansas, there's no Vanderbilt teams in the tournament. A&M has good records against good teams. There's 22 teams playing for 12 spots right now. ESPN has 5 teams considered as should be in, which leaves 7 true spots for teams with work to do. We're really up against New Mexico, Virginia, Colorado. We really need Florida Atlantic to win their tournament. And Colorado's listed as a team that should be in, so they need to win their tournament too, and not have a team come in from out of there. You look at the quad 1, quad 2 wins. New Mexico is 7-7 in quad 1 and quad 2. Seton Hall is 9-11, with only 2 of those being a quad 1 win. Colorado 9-9, with only 2 of those also being quad 1. Virginia 10-9, with only 2 of those being quad 1 wins. So, I think when you look at the potential for A&M to take on Kentucky today and get another quad 1 win, and then Florida potentially beating Alabama, which would make us have another quad 1 win, that would really help when they consider the quad 3 losses.
Absolutely.
As well.
And you bring up a really good point that I think has flown completely under the radar. This NCAA tournament is not full of quad 3 and quad 4 teams. How has the bubble teams, how have they done against teams that are going to be in the tournament, against teams that were threatening to be in the tournament? Because that's what they're going to see. I think that's a huge feather in the hat of the Aggies.
Absolutely. I think when it comes to, teams like Arkansas and Vanderbilt, we just don't tend to show up for those games. And it's not like we're getting blown out by those teams either. We've lost on a 1-possession, last minute shot. You look at South Carolina too, we played them really well. And they're a really hot team right now. The A-10 has a guaranteed bid stealer, which means all 4 of the top seeds went down yesterday. So bubble spot was taken there. And then we need Marquette to win the Big East. And
I do have a problem with a system that, according to what I'm reading here, Memphis drops from 74 to 76, and then it goes to a quad 3 loss. That system has issues.
Flawed.
If that's going to be a knock on the A&M resume. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
How does that happen where a team gets docked 2 spots and all of a sudden it gets thrown into this quad 3 loss, which is a huge negative hit to the resume of Texas A&M? I just think they rely upon the net a lot. And I think that was a system that was implemented and designed by the NCAA to help make decisions on bubble teams in the tournament. But if it's so fickle as to it could be a really negative effect on a resume by a team dropping 2 spots in it, then how good of an indicator is it actually of a team's overall resume? I don't know.
Yeah.
But, we're hoping for it in the other way, right? We're
sure.
hoping it works in the inverse. You were talking about Florida beating Alabama. That would bump A&M's win over Florida earlier this year into a quad 1 win. So it's very interesting. Bid thieves still remaining, according to T3 Bracketology on Twitter. The A-10, as you mentioned, has a confirmed thief now that Dayton has lost. The AAC, all but Florida Atlantic. The ACC, NC State would be a bid stealer. The Big Ten, Indiana would be a bid stealer. And in the Pac-12, Oregon and Utah would be bid stealers. So 5 total league thieves possible remain. The Aggies need those schools that I just mentioned. Anybody in the AAC not named Florida Atlantic, NC State, Indiana, Oregon, and Utah. If you're an A&M fan, you're rooting against all of those. You need to be pro-FAU, and you need to be anti-NC State, Indiana, Oregon, and Utah. If all that falls A&M's way, you feel way better about what happens to the Aggies come Selection Sunday, regardless of the result on the floor in Nashville tonight. All right, when we come back, we're going back to the baseball diamond. We'll welcome in Nick De La Torre of Gators Online, who will join us via the Brian Foley Law Hotline. And we will talk all things Aggies and Gators down there from the swamp this weekend. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, we are creeping toward a busy weekend in Texas A&M sports. This is TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. As we get ready to preview Texas A&M versus Florida down there at Condren Family Ballpark in Gainesville. To do that, we welcome in my good friend Nick De La Torre on the Brian Foley Law Hotline. Good people can have a bad day. Call Brian Foley, 936-596-0407, serving Houston, the Woodlands, Conroe, and the Brazos Valley. Nick, good morning, man. I appreciate you joining us.
Good morning, and I'm going to take my opening as congratulations to you and your beautiful bride. Hope the wedding and the honeymoon was fantastic.
Well, congratulations to you, expecting father later on this fall. I'm sure the Gator fans will totally understand that if you have to miss a football game or covering some of the stuff in Gainesville because you're having a child. They seem like a really understanding bunch down there.
Well, she's actually due the Thursday of the Aggies, the Florida Texas A&M game, which means I will definitely miss the opportunity to go to Starkville, which, breaks my heart.
All right,
which
man.
is the following week, so I'll miss that.
All right, so let's get into it this weekend. Texas A&M travels down there. Obviously, Florida has had their fair share of run-ins already with undefeated teams. They took on Florida State in the midweek, came up short there, and now they welcome in the Aggies. So far, Nick, obviously 10-6, a little bit of an up and down beginning to the season for Kevin O'Sullivan's bunch. What have you seen out of this group so far? Like, how would you describe their style of play through the first month or so of the season?
Yeah, I think Kevin O'Sullivan kind of looks like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day every post-game press conference, because even in wins, the game plays out pretty much the same way. Florida's starting pitchers just haven't gotten the job done. They're not getting ahead in counts. You're getting too many 2-0, 2-1, 3-1 counts and getting into fastball counts and giving a ton of hard contact up in those counts. So Florida, in their losses, is averaging 6 runs, and the fans down here in Gainesville are used to Alex Faedo, Brady Singer, Jackson Coher, Logan Shore, and if you gave those guys 6 runs, you can pack it up. That's a win. So it's been frustrating for Florida's coaching staff, because it's hard to even make moves when you look at the bullpen. Guys are coming in and walking the first batter they face. They're walking the 7, 8, 9 batters. There really isn't even a guy pitching well enough that you can say, okay, we can shake things up on the weekend. So Florida's pitching staff is young. 11 of their 18 pitchers are freshmen, and 3 of those freshmen are out for the year with Tommy John surgery. So you already knew you're going to be relying on young arms. And they're just, unfortunately for Florida, looking like freshmen through the first 16 games. And until somebody else steps up, there's really not anything Florida can turn to until a 6'7" Pierce Kapala comes back, but he might be 3-4 weeks away still.
Well, one guy that has stepped up, obviously, is Jack Caglione. But like you were saying, you can't really shuffle stuff with Jack, because you want him to hit and play first base in the first 2 games of the series before really emptying his tank to have his start. What have you seen out of Jack? He's leading the Gators in average, but he's not been the leader in RBIs. He's not the leader in homers. Like, this lineup is certainly deeper than just Jack Caglione. But how have you seen him kind of improve his game in the batter's box and also on the mound?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I'll start with the mound because it'll be quick. I mean, he's been their safety net on Sundays. Salvage Sundays. Jack's been great pitching. I think the biggest thing for him is commanding the zone. Obviously, that coming off of Tommy John surgery, pitching as a sophomore last year, I think that command is probably the last thing that comes back after that kind of injury. And then just mentally, Jack was a guy that if he walked a batter, that was liable to turn into 3 walks, a hit batter, and 4 runs, and he just couldn't get past failure. And we know baseball's a game of failure. So I think mentally he's grown up a lot. He puts things behind him, moves on, stays in the moment. And offensively, it's tough. Maybe he surprised some people last year, but nobody is surprising Jack Caglione. Jack Caglione is not surprising anyone this year. I was at UNF, and the guys down in the bullpen were talking about, oh man, if we have to go in and face Jack, what are you going to throw? So he's commanding, this kind of superstar respect, even among the players that he's competing against. Offensively, he's doing a much better job of using the whole field. We've seen some wild shifts. He definitely has grounded out to, mid-shallow right field several times, but he's doing a really good job of staying inside the baseball and really driving the ball to left center and to left field.
Well, this offense, man, it's loaded, hitting 300 as a team, and a lot of these names that I'm looking at here on the stat sheet, Nick, are names that became synonymous with Florida baseball during the run to the Gators, the run to the final last year, and it's Ty Evans and Cade Curlin and Luke Heyman and Tyler Shelnut, Michael Robertson. Look, and then they did that. They had all these guys return, and then they add somebody like Colby Shelton, who is just, he's been right up there with Jace Lavalette in terms of power and run production so far this year in the SEC. Like, this lineup, it's the best way for Florida to stay in games right now until the pitching gets figured out, right?
Yeah, I mean, Florida has 5 guys with an OPS above 1,000. Colby Shelton has effortless power from the left side, and I really like the way that they structure their lineup at the top. You've got right, left, all the way through their first 6 batters. So there's a bunch of guys. Listen, it was never going to be easy to replace Wyatt Langford, who I think should be on the Rangers opening day roster in some capacity, unless they're trying to do some, contract stuff and get in an extra year. Had to replace B.T. Ryapel, the catcher, had to replace Josh Rivera. But Florida's offense has not been the issue. You've got Jack hitting over 400, Cade Curlin, Luke Heyman, Armando Albert, Colby Shelton, and Ty Evans all hitting over 300. They strike out a lot. Striking out might be one of their favorite things to do. I was joking with somebody that they might strike out 31, 32 times this weekend, but they're liable to score 10 to 12, 14 runs quickly in any game because of that power. So it's definitely a fun lineup. It'll be interesting to see what they do against Texas A&M, because I think Florida has faced really good pitchers. Texas and Florida, just as states, I think we both know that, hey, Sam Houston State, they can bring somebody in throwing 95 from the left side in the 8th inning out of nowhere. And that's kind of the same thing that you face here in Florida when you're going up against the FAUs, Stetsons, Florida Gulf Coast, and Jacksonville. There's just a ton of arms. So Florida's faced, this lineup has faced some really good pitching.
Yeah, and I think that's you bring up a good point. On Tuesday against Sam Houston State, A&M, the middle reliever that Sam Houston State brought in was 93 to 95, really good stuff. And then they bring in a closer who's on the preseason stopper of the year list, and A&M was able to rally and get a run. So you do bring up a good point where, a lot of people will look at more so A&M's schedule and go, well, they really hadn't played anybody. But when you start diving into some of these mid-majors in the state of Florida, California, and Texas, you're going to find that there's a lot of pro players and pro prospects on those teams. So I think with both of these squads, Nick, they're super talented. There's major league players on both of these squads, but we still really don't know. Even though Florida's 10-6, A&M is 17-0, we still really don't know about these clubs until they start playing against talent level that's on the same water level as the other.
Yeah, and listen, the magic number in the SEC is 20. Typically, if you get to 20 wins in conference play, you've got a very good shot to win the conference. So for Florida, that has looked at like 13 consecutive 3-game regular season home series wins in a row, dating back to the 2022 season. I think it's going to be a huge test for Florida, but if you want to get to that 20 wins, that's 2 out of 3 every weekend for the next 10 weekends, and you make it a lot harder on yourself if you start off the season without a series win. So how much does Texas A&M's first real road trip, playing in what should be a hostile environment? We've had some great crowds in Gainesville, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 people showing up to games, which is great for Florida. How do they handle being on the road? How do they handle sleeping in a hotel and having to go up against Florida and being in that road crowd? How does Florida handle, their first SEC test? I mean, it's nobody is scoring on the Aggies. The arms that Texas A&M is bringing are super impressive. So I think it should be a great series, and certainly one that you'll start learning about. Okay, is Florida really struggling? Can they figure it out? And then Texas A&M will learn, hey, maybe you just don't know who we played, and it doesn't matter who we played. We're a serious team.
When you look at the numbers, Nick, where are some areas of concern for you with Florida facing this A&M lineup? I can tell you this, where Florida, the power output is crazy for them offensively, and you mentioned the OPS and the slugging and just the extra base hit numbers that they've got 1 through 9. A&M's got that, but where their offense is different, and I think this is where A&M could have success. So I'll be interested to see if you've thought about this as like a worry spot for Florida. A&M, they walk more than they strike out. Like A&M does not swing at bad pitches. They haven't over the course of Jim Schlossnagle's tenure here. It's something they've really hung their hat on is taking their walks. So if Florida, they're talented on the mound. You can't tell me that those kids aren't talented. But if they start spraying the ball over the strike zone, it could put them in some really tight spots against this A&M lineup that can slug and hit homers themselves.
I mean, I'm looking at A&M's numbers, and the walk numbers jump off the page. Florida has really struggled landing their off speed, and that's kind of what I was getting to with walking guys or getting into hitters' counts, and then other teams feasting on fastballs. Friday night, Cade Fisher had a great freshman year, but he's really only a two-pitch guy. He's thrown a handful of changeups. He's a lefty that's 91 to 94. And if he's not landing that slider, you might as well have a coach behind an L screen throwing to Texas A&M this week, because 91 to 94 is nothing that these guys can't handle. So that's a big thing for me. If Texas A&M is going to force Florida to throw strikes, and one of the pillars of Kevin O'Sullivan's entire program has been first pitch strike, first 2 out of 3, and they go over the different numbers of what's the batting average and what's the on-base percentage of a batter when he's 2-0 versus when he's 1-2. And it's significant, 100 points. It's been a huge issue for Florida. They don't really need Texas A&M to have a great eye. They've just been walking guys on 4 and 5 pitches. So that's a huge thing. Kevin O'Sullivan really hasn't had any answers. And I've been covering this team since 2013, and it's probably the most alarming, or the most alarmed I've been heading into SEC play when I look at the pitchers and the walks per 9.
Well, dude, I'm looking forward to it. I know you are as well. If you're listening to this and you want to follow Nick on Twitter, it's De La Torre. He'll be providing inning-by-inning updates. You just do such a great job, man. I envy your work down there in Gainesville, and you've accrued a following of college baseball fans from across the country because you do such great work.
Look, we're all just trying to grow the game at the end of the day, Barney.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, hopefully I can make a trip down there and see you and maybe your new beautiful baby later this fall.
I'd love that. Hey, you're always welcome here, and I'm sure you guys will probably make it down for football season, so we'll see you at some point.
Yeah, we'll save you a chair at the tap.
That's my spot.
All right, buddy. Have a good one, man.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, that's Nick De La Torre from Gators Online. When we come back, we'll close the show. We'll give away some pizza. We'll talk to you about Troubadour Fest, and we'll get you ready for the weekend of Aggie Sports. You listen to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, putting a bow on things on a Friday morning. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, and it's time to give away some pizza. Time to give away some Double Daves. At caller number 12, 979-693-1150. Caller number 12 at 979-693-1150. We'll hook you up with your choice of a dozen pepperoni rolls or a large one-topping pizza from Double Dave's. Serving Aggieland since 1984. Your favorite pizza and world-famous pepperoni rolls with reliable in-house delivery, bringing piping hot goodness straight to your door. Just click doubledaves.com, and your favorites are on the way. And while you're getting your phones out, getting ready to call us up for pizza, let me tell you about Troubadour Festival. A Texas barbecue and music experience returns to Texas A&M's Aggie Park on Saturday, May 18th, and this year's event is even bigger and better. Troubadour Festival is bringing together 35 of the best barbecue joints in Texas for you to indulge in unlimited samples of their incredible smoke creations. And you can't forget about the music. There's live country music on 2 stages all day, including this year's headliner and country music icon, Mr. Travis Tritt. He'll be joined by Texas country legend Pat Green, as well as William Clark Green, the Red Clay Strays, the Cameron Sackey Band, and more. Whether you want to experience the barbecue and the concert or just the concert itself, there's a ticket for you. Tickets are now on sale at troubadourfestival.com. That's troubadourfestival.com. So get yours, and we'll see you at Aggie Park. Me and my wife went last year, and I personally cannot sign off on it more. If you are looking for something to do in a late spring weekend in Aggieland, Troubadour Fest was fan-freaking-tastic last year. The vendors were great. The lines were efficient. You didn't sit around and wait in the hot sun all day to try to get a drink or try to get barbecue. The musical acts were really, really good. Shane Smith and the Saints just tore the roof off the place. I highly encourage this for you and your family, and everybody can come. You know, there's plenty of space to, if you need to let the kids run around, you can bring your own lawn chair in there to sit down and watch all the musical acts throughout the course of the day. There's just so much to do. Again, Callie, I don't know if you have been to Troubadour Fest yet, but if you haven't, you need to put it on your list for this May.
I have not been, but it's definitely on my list. I've been to a few events in Aggie Park, and I mean, that place is beautiful. And I think it's a great place for concerts, and it's definitely on my list. I'm excited.
I'll say this. We got Chili Fest coming up. Chili Fest is a young man's game, and I'm no longer a young man. So I have 0.0 desire to drive out to Snook and experience Chili Fest. A lot of people do. That's fine and great. One of my former baseball players who is making his own name into the Texas country music scene, Cole Whittlesey, is playing out there. I'm so excited for Cole, one of my favorite human beings walking this planet, and I'm pulling for him to continue to make strides and continue to kind of gain a following in the Texas music scene. But I will not brave all that is Chili Fest to go out and see Cole perform. But Aggie Park, it's easy. It's in town. There's plenty of parking. There's plenty of ways to get to and from, obviously, the Kyle Field area from all over Bryan College Station. I just think it makes a lot of sense. And I was so impressed, like I said, with the efficiency of the entire operation throughout the day last year whenever we went. Behind the glass, I want to say thank you to Matthew Dawson and Cade for pulling the strings on the show. Nick handed them the reins. I think, is this y'all's first show to do, Matthew?
Yeah, it is, actually.
Wow. So congratulations to you guys. Congratulations to Nick as well. It's not easy to train people on all these systems that we have to use and work. So how do you think it went, dude?
You know, at first we weren't super locked in, but we figured it out. After that first segment, it was a little bit rough, but Cade was huge here because he's been doing this longer than I have. So having Cade here was absolutely massive. If I was here by myself, it would have been a struggle.
Hey, let me tell you something for you young guys in the back, young guys and girls in the back, and Callie, you as well. The figure it out gene goes a long, long way in life. Whether you're looking for jobs, whether you're trying to figure out finances with your family, whether you're trying to make any kind of decisions, having a figure it out gene and having that in your back pocket goes a long, long way. Don't make excuses. Figure it out. That's the way I've always looked at it, and it has served me well up to this point in my life. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me over the last couple of days. David will be back in the host chair. I know a lot of you miss him. He's working on his tan down in Galveston. He'll be back here on Monday. We're about to kick it to the Louis Bellina Show. But this has been TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers.